Hello everybody, welcome back to Forever Conscious Research Channel. Hope you're doing well today. I apologize for the delay there. Whoop. Okay, I had my audio running in the background here. Just give me just a second here, just going to check the audio, make sure it sounds good. And then we're going to just jump right into, I believe we're starting with case 9 today. So, case 9. Anyone who is new, just so you know, the previous video, which is part 1, has timestamps posted. I will also do the same thing for this video. You probably take about an hour to get those in there. Check the description and comment section for that if you're coming in later or are just seeing this video for the first time on a replay. So let me just check the audio and we're going to get right into it. One moment. Seems okay. Alright, maybe a little bit higher on there. Okay. And let me get this going here. Make sure that's not too high. Now I'm just going to test the audio on the cases as well. One sec.
Case 9 is a client who has had a great number of lives, spanning thousands of years. About 8 lives before his current one, people finally stopped meeting him at the spiritual gate. Case 9. Dr. N. What happens? Belong than those who stop to meet others. Case 9 is a client who has had a great number of lives, spanning thousands of years. About 8 lives...
Okay, thanks for bearing with me there. And we are going to jump right into it here. Alright, so case 9. Welcome everybody. Again, hope you're doing well. And let's get going.
They belong than those who stop to meet others. Case 9 is a client who has had a great number of lives, spanning thousands of years. About 8 lives before his current one, people finally stopped meeting him at the spiritual gate. Case 9. Dr. N. What happens to you at the moment of death? Subject. I feel a great sense of release and I move out fast. Dr. N. How would you characterize your departure from Earth into the spirit world? Subject. I shoot up like a column of light and I'm on my way. Dr. N. Has it always been this fast for you? Subject. No, only after my last series of lives. Dr. N. Why? Subject. I know the way. I don't need to see anybody. I'm in a hurry. Dr. N. And it doesn't bother you that you are not met by anyone? Subject. Laughs. There was a time when it was good, but I don't require that sort of thing anymore. Dr. N. Whose decision was it to allow you to enter the spirit world without assistance? Subject. Pause, and then with a shrug. It was a mutual decision between my teacher and me.
Yeah, see right there. Mutual decision between my teacher and me. Ugh. It's just so obvious, isn't it? Alright, so let's go. So basically this one gets a direct flight back in because they're just so indoctrinated with the system that there's no need for the welcome wagon to come rolling in. Except the master, the teacher.
When I knew I could handle things by myself. Dr. N. And you don't feel rather lost or lonely right now? Subject. Are you kidding? I don't need my hand held anymore. I know where I'm going and I'm anxious to get there. I'm being pulled along by a magnet and I just enjoy the ride. Dr. N. Explain to me how this pulling process works, which will take you to your destination. Subject. I am riding on a wave, a beam of light. Dr. N. Is this beam electromagnetic or what? Subject. Well, it's similar to the bands of a radio with someone tuning the dial and finding the right frequency for me.
And what is, a lot of this based on? It's frequency. We talk about frequency all the time and how it relates to our lives here. It's no different over there. And the sense you get from this soul is that they have basically given everything away. There's probably the smallest of fragments left of this poor thing. And it's just so degraded and so taken over through time after lifetime that they're just, you feel bad. How can you not feel bad? Feel bad for all of us, right? We've all been through this, but this one you can hear is really deep, deeply lost.
Dr. N, are you saying you are being guided by an invisible force without much voluntary control, and that you can't speed things up as you did right after death? Subject: yes, I must go with the wave bands of light. The waves have direction, and I'm flowing with it. It's easy. They do it all for you. Dr. N, who does it for you? Subject: the ones in control? I don't really know. Dr. N, then you are not in control. You don't have the responsibility of finding your own destination.
Hear that? I mean, this is like what I said in the first video when I kind of introduced this the book. I had mentioned that he asked some great questions. I mean, think about that question. That's a great question. I'm just going to rewind it because it's really important to hear that, he's prodding and asking the right stuff, but he doesn't see it. He does not see it at all. He explains it away just like all the others. So let me just rewind that really quick.
Some are not whole. Who does it for you? Subject: the ones in control? I don't really know. Dr. N, then you are not in control. You don't have the responsibility of finding your own destination. Subject: pause. My mind is in tune with the movement. I flow with the resonance. Dr. N, resonance? You hear sounds? Subject: yes, the wave beam vibrates. I am locked into this, too.
Locked in.
Dr. N, let's go back to your statement about the radio. Is your spiritual travel influenced by vibrational frequencies such as high, medium, and low resonance quality? Subject, laughing: that's not bad. Yes, and I'm on a line like a homing beacon of sound and light. And it's part of my own tonal pattern, my frequency. Dr. N, I'm not sure I understand how light and vibration combine to set up directional bands. Subject: think of a monster tuning fork inside a flashing strobe light. Dr. N, oh, then there is energy here? Subject: we have energy within an energy field. So it isn't just the lines we travel on. We generate energy ourselves. We can use these forces depending on our experience. Dr. N, then your maturity level does give you some element of control in the rate and direction of travel. Subject: yes, but not right here. Later, when I'm settled, I can move around much more on my own. Now I'm being pulled and I'm supposed to go with it. Dr. N, okay, stay with this and describe to me what happens next. Subject: short pause. I'm moving alone, being homed into my proper space, going where I belong. In hypnosis, the analytical conscious mind works in conjunction with the unconscious mind to receive and answer messages directed to our deep-seated memories. The subject in Case 9 is an electrical engineer, and thus he utilized some technical descriptions to express his spiritual sensations. This client's predisposition to explain his thoughts on soul travel in technical terms was encouraged, but not dictated by my suggestions. All subjects bring their own segments of knowledge to bear on answering my questions about the spirit world. This case used physical laws familiar to him to describe motion, whereas another person might have said souls move in this tract within a vacuum. Before continuing with the passage of souls into the spirit world, I want to discuss those entities who either have not made it this far after physical death or will be diverted from the normal travel route. 4. The displaced soul. There are souls who have been so severely damaged they are detached from the mainstream of souls going back to a spiritual home base. Compared to all returning entities, the number of these abnormal souls is not large. However, what has happened to them on Earth is significant because of the serious effect they have on other incarnated souls. There are two types of displaced souls: those who do not accept the fact their physical body is dead and fight returning to the spirit world for reasons of personal anguish, and those souls who have been subverted by, or had complicity with, criminal abnormalities in a human body. In the first instance, displacement is of the soul's own choosing, while in the second case, spiritual guides deliberately remove these souls from further association with other entities for an indeterminate period. In both situations, the guides of these souls are intimately concerned with rehabilitation.
Oh, yeah, sure they are. Yeah, they probably put the psychopaths in these nice little groups together, and they are probably promoted. They're the ones that are flourishing, both up there and down here. Mark my words on that one. We know that's happening. They're the ones that, basically will probably get the world handed to them. Of course, they gotta, throw them in prison once in a while and all that stuff. But, those are the real loosh gatherers out there that the system thrives off of. And the more people they impact and hurt while here, the system likes that. That's what we've come to really learn about all this, is that, it's negative energy extraction, aka loosh.
But because the circumstances are quite different between each type of displaced soul, I will treat them separately. The first type we call ghosts. These spirits refuse to go home after physical death, and often have unpleasant influences on those of us who would like to finish out our own human lives in peace. These displaced souls are sometimes falsely called demonic spirits because they are accused of invading the minds of people with harmful intent. The subject of negative spirits has produced serious investigations in the field of parapsychology. Unfortunately, this area of spirituality has also attracted a fringe element of the unscrupulous associated with the occult, who prey on the emotions of susceptible people. The troubled spirit is an immature entity with unfinished business in a past life on Earth. They may have no relation to the living person who is disrupted by them. It is true that some people are convenient and receptive conduits for negative spirits who wish to express their querulous nature. This means that someone who is in a deep meditative state of consciousness might occasionally pick up annoying signal patterns from a discarnated being, whose communications can range from the frivolous to provocative.
Okay, and Lee brought up a good point about Jerry Marzinski. If you need further information and education in this department, I've interviewed Jerry Marzinski twice, and he, if you check my playlist, I think under my interview playlist, or if you scroll back, it was sometime last year, a couple times, he goes into great detail about this stuff. And he's a psychologist of 35 plus years, now retired, worked in hospital and prison setting, and actually helped people who had schizophrenia, which basically what's going on there is there's some sort of negative entity attachment. I'm not going to go too far into the medical part of it, but keep that in mind if you want to get further, some further information on that. And he also has a website, book, stuff like that. So feel free to look him up. Jerry Marzinski. I'll type his name in the chat again.
These unsettled entities are not spiritual guides. Real guides are healers and don't intrude with acrimonious messages. More often than not, these uncommon haunted spirits are tied to a particular geographic location. Researchers who have specialized in the phenomena of ghosts indicate those disturbed entities are caught in a no-man's land between the lower astral planes of Earth and the spirit world. From my own research, I don't believe these souls are lost in space, nor are they demonic. They choose to remain within the Earth plane after physical death for a time by their own volition, due to a high level of discontent. In my opinion, they are damaged souls because they evidence confusion, despair, and even hostility to such an extent they want their guides to stay away from them. We do know a negative displaced entity can be reached and handled by various means, such as exorcism, to get them to stop interfering with human beings. Possessing spirits can be persuaded to leave, and eventually make a proper transition into the spirit world.
Now, I think I'll even add that, when it comes to that type, that personality type, that soul that has been so degraded that it is just a one soul wrecking machine that wreaks havoc both down here and up there, it would only make sense that they don't need as much hand holding, like compared to souls like us, who, are not feeding the system exactly the way it would want it to be fed. So just throwing that out there, something to think about.
If we have a spirit world governed by order, with guides who care about us, how can maladaptive souls who exert negative energy upon incarnated beings be allowed to exist? One explanation is that we still have free will, even in death. Another is that since we endure so many upheavals in our physical universe, then spiritual irregularities and deviations from the normal exodus of souls ought to be anticipated as well. Also, ghosts only represent a divided portion of a disturbed soul's energy, while the rest has returned to the spirit world for reunification. Discarnate, unhappy spirits who trap themselves are possibly part of a grand design. When they are ready, these souls will be taken by the hand away from Earth's astral plane and guided to their proper place in the spirit world.
Yeah, they're sent off to the promotion desk. Oh my goodness, there you go. You're going to get a raise for that incarnation.
I turn now to the far more prevalent second type of disturbed soul. These are souls who have been involved with evil acts. We should first speculate if a soul can be considered culpable or guilt-free when it occupied the offending criminal brain. Is the soul mind or human ego responsible, or are they the same? Occasionally, a client will say to me, "I feel possessed by an inner force which tells me to do bad things." There are mentally ill people who feel driven by opposing forces of good and evil, over which they believe they have no control. After working for years with the superconscious minds of people under hypnosis, I have come to the conclusion that the five-sensory human can negatively act upon a soul's psyche. We express our eternal self through dominant biological needs, and the pressures of environmental stimuli which are temporary to the incarnated soul. Although there is no hidden, sinister self within our human form, some souls are not fully assimilated. People not in harmony with their bodies feel detached from themselves in life. This can...
Yeah, they're broken. They are broken as you can get. They've probably been here so long, and just kind of like the corporate leaders, the politicians, all that stuff. The top of the top that we can see out in the system. They probably like it here. They're super materialist. They enjoy this place, and they don't mind running over anyone and anything that gets them what they want. And so what does the system do? The system rewards them for it. And you can bet your ass that's what's going on up there and in relation to down here.
Tradition does not excuse souls from doing their utmost to prevent evil involvement on Earth. We see this in human conscience. It is important we distinguish between what is exerting a negative force on our mind and what is not. Hearing an inner voice, which may suggest self-destruction to ourselves or someone else, is not a demonic spiritual entity, an alien presence, nor a malevolent renegade guide. Negative forces emanate from ourself. The destructive impulses of emotional disorders, if left untreated, inhibit soul development. Those of us who have experienced unresolved personal trauma in our lives carry the seeds of our own destruction. This anguish affects our soul in such a way that it seems we are not whole. For instance, excessive craving and addictive behavior, which is the outgrowth of personal pain, inhibits the expression of a healthy soul, and may even hold a soul in bondage to its host body. Does the extent of contemporary violence mean that we have more souls going wrong today than in the past? If nothing else, our overpopulation and mind-altering drug culture should support this conclusion. On the positive side, Earth's international level of consciousness toward human suffering appears to be rising. I've been told that in every era of Earth's bloody history, there has always been a significant number of souls unable to resist and successfully counter human cruelty. Certain souls, whose hosts have a genetic disposition to abnormal brain chemistry, are particularly at risk in a violent environment. We see how children can be so damaged by physical and emotional family abuse that as adults, they commit premeditated acts of atrocity without feelings of remorse. Since souls are not created perfect, their nature can be contaminated during the development of such a life form. If our transgressions are especially serious, we call them evil. My subjects say to me no soul is inherently evil, although it may acquire this label in human life. Pathological evil in humans is characterized by feelings of personal impotence and weakness, which is stimulated by helpless victims. Although souls who are involved with truly evil acts should generally be considered at a low level of development, soul immaturity does not automatically invite malevolent behavior from a damaged human personality. The evolution of souls involves a transition from imperfection to perfection based upon overcoming many difficult body assignments during their task-oriented lives. Souls may also have a predisposition for selecting environments where they consistently don't work well or are subverted.
Yeah, and they're also egged on. Okay, you're going to find that out in this book too, that they're egged on to go in certain directions or be guided by their guides, to go in certain directions. It's unreal. It really is.
Thus, souls may have their identity damaged by poor life choices. However, all souls are held accountable for their conduct in the bodies they occupy. We will see in the next chapter how souls receive an initial review of their past life with guides before moving on to join their friends. But what happens to souls who have, through their bodies, caused extreme suffering to another? If a soul is not capable of ameliorating the most violent human urges in its host body, how is it held accountable in afterlife? This brings up the issue of being sent to heaven or hell for good and bad deeds, because accountability has long been a part of our religious traditions. On the wall of my office hangs an Egyptian painting, the judgment scene, as represented in the Book of the Dead, which is a mythological ritual of death over 7,000 years old. The ancient Egyptians had an obsession with death and the world beyond the grave, because in their cosmic pantheon, death explained life. The picture shows a newly deceased man arriving in a place located between the land of the living and the kingdom of the dead. He stands by a set of scales about to be judged for his past deeds on earth. The master of ceremonies is the god Anubis, who carefully weighs the man's heart on one pan of the scale against the ostrich feather of truth on the opposite side. The heart, not the head, represented the embodiment of a person's soul conscience to the Egyptians. It is a tense moment. A crocodile-headed monster is crouched nearby with his mouth open, ready to devour the heart if the man's wrongs outweigh the good he did in life. Failure at the scales would end the existence of this soul. I get quite a few comments from my clients about this picture.
Yeah, and I just think that's totally wrong. We've got well, it's not wrong in the sense that it's not happening. The point is it's a deception and manipulation. If you're new to the channel, check out my Karma and Sinner Deception video. All of this links together, and there's multiple pieces involved, and there is no judgment except the judgment that you place on yourself and reflect it back at the time of death. There is no karma. There is no sinner. All that stuff does exist because it's used against you to lure you back in here. That's why it exists. But it doesn't exist in a truthful manner. You get what I'm saying? It's illusionary. But it's used against us when we cross over. Big. One of the biggest things they have out there to keep their hooks in everybody.
A metaphysically oriented person would insist no one is denied entrance into the kingdom of afterlife, regardless of how unfavorably balanced the scales might be toward past conduct. Is this belief true? Are all souls given the opportunity to transmute back into the spirit world the same way, irrespective of their association with the bodies they occupied? To answer this question, I should begin by mentioning that a large segment of society believes all souls do not go to the same place. More moderate theology no longer stresses the idea of hellfire and brimstone for sinners. However, many religious sects indicate a spiritual coexistence of two mental states of good and evil. For the bad soul, there are ancient philosophical pronouncements denoting a separation from the God essence as a means of punishment after death. The Tibetan Book of the Dead, a source of religious belief thousands of years older than the Bible, describes the state of consciousness between lives, the bardo, as a time when the evil we have perpetrated projects us into spiritual separation. If the people of the East believed in a special spiritual location for evildoers, was this idea similar to the concept of purgatory in the Western world?
Yes.
From its earliest beginnings, Christian doctrine defined purgatory as a transitory state of temporary banishment for sins of a minor nature against humanity. The Christian purgatory is supposed to be a place of atonement, isolation, and suffering.
Mechanism.
When all negative karma is removed, these souls are eventually allowed into heaven. On the other hand, souls committing major, deadly sins are condemned to hell forever.
Just remember, these are mechanisms. These are mechanisms used against us. That's the most important thing to take away from this section, is that you can see it's been cross-culture, all right? And in our psyche, as souls, as society, across the world, forever, okay? And it's just a tool. It's another deception mechanism. Just try and always keep that in mind. Remember, be a good person for being a good person. Treat others the way you want to be treated. But forgive yourself, too, for things you have done in the past. And move on.
Does hell exist to permanently separate good souls from bad ones? All my casework with the spirits of my subjects has convinced me there is no residence of terrible suffering for souls, except on earth. I am told all souls go to one spirit world after death, where everyone is treated with patience and love. However, I have learned that certain souls do undergo separation in the spirit world, and this happens at the time of their orientation with guides. They are not activated along the same travel routes as other souls. Those of my subjects who have been impeded by evil report that souls whose influence was too weak to turn aside a human impulse to harm others will go into seclusion upon re-entering the spirit world. These souls don't appear to mix with other entities in the conventional manner for quite a while. I have also noticed that those beginner souls who are habitually associated with intensely negative human conduct in their first series of lives must endure individual spiritual isolation. Ultimately, they are placed together in their own group to intensify learning under close supervision. This is not punishment, but rather a kind of purgatory for the restructuring of self-awareness with these souls. Because wrongdoing takes so many forms on earth, spiritual instruction and the type of isolation used is varied for each soul. The nature of these variations apparently is evaluated during orientation at the end of each life. Relative time of seclusion and reindoctrination is not consistent either. For instance, I have had reports about maladjusted spirits who have returned back to Earth directly after a period of seclusion in order to expunge themselves as soon as possible by a good incarnated performance. Here is an example, as told to me by a soul who was acquainted with one of these spirits. Case 10. Dr. N. Do souls bear responsibility for their involvement with flawed human beings who injure others in life? Subject. Yes. Those who have wronged others savagely in a life. I knew one of those souls. Dr. N. What do you know about this entity? What happened after this soul returned to the spirit world following that life? Subject. He had hurt a girl terribly and did not rejoin our group. There was extensive private study for him because he did so poorly while in that body. Dr. N. What was the extent of his punishment? Subject. Punishment is a wrong interpretation. It's regeneration. You have to recognize this is a matter for your teacher. The teachers are more strict with those who have been involved with cruelty. Dr. N. What does more strict mean to you in the spirit world? Subject. Well, my friend didn't go back with us, his friends, after this sad life where he hurt this girl. Dr. N. Did he come through the same spiritual gateway as yourself when he died? Subject. Yes, but he did not meet with anybody. He went directly to a place where he was alone with the teacher.
Yeah, he went directly to the promotional desk. You know, he got a raise.
Dr. N. And then what happened to him? Subject. After a while, not long, he returned to Earth again as a woman, where people were cruel, physically abusive. It was a deliberate choice. My friend needed to experience that. Dr. N. Do you think this soul blamed the human brain of his former host body for hurting the girl? Subject. No, he took what he had done back into himself. He blamed his own lack of skill to overcome the human failings. He asked to become an abused woman himself in the next life to gain understanding.
And I'm sure there was also guidance from the teachers. You know, they're suggested to do this, suggested to do that. Oh, why don't you maybe try being poor in the middle of nowhere, without running water and electricity, things like that, have an abusive parent. All these things seem to be chosen, yes, but also guided and manipulated by a master or guide, whatever you want to call it.
To appreciate the damage he had done to the girl. Dr. N. If this friend of yours did not gain understanding and continued involving himself with humans who committed wrongful acts, could he be destroyed as a soul by someone in the spirit world? Subject. Long pause. You can't destroy energy exactly, but it can be reworked. Negativity, which is unmanageable in many lives, can be readjusted. Dr. N. How? Subject. Vaguely. Not by destruction. Remodeling. Case 10 did not respond further to this line of questioning. Another subject who knows something about these damaged souls are rather sparse with their information. Later, we will learn a bit more about the formation and restoration of intelligent energy. Most errant souls are able to solve their own problems of contamination. The price we pay for our misdeeds and the rewards received for good conduct revolve around the laws of karma. Perpetrators of harm to others will do penance by setting themselves up as future victims in a karmic cycle of justice. The Bhagavad Gita, another early Eastern scripture which has stood the test of thousands of years, has a passage which says, "Souls of evil influence must redeem their virtue." No study of life after death would have any meaning without addressing how karma relates to causality and justice for all souls. Karma by itself does not denote good or bad deeds. Rather, it is the result of one's positive and negative actions in life. The statement, "There are no accidents in our lives," does not mean karma by itself impels. What it does is propel us forward by teaching lessons. Our future destiny is influenced by a past.
See that, the whole lessons thing. Earth is a school. You've got to grow your soul. Blah, blah, blah. How many times have you heard this crap over and over again? The karmic guilt, the sinner guilt. It's never ending. It's a cycle that you will not get out of until you learn your way out and expand your consciousness to see beyond this physical plane. It's nuts, and everything is normalized. Like the term I've used in the past, the Earth is like Stockholm Syndrome on steroids. Everyone has normalized their captors. They've associated with their captors. Everything is just excused away. It's insane.
Which we cannot escape, especially when we injure others. The key to growth is understanding we are given the ability to make mid-course corrections in our life, and having the courage to make necessary changes when what we are doing is not working for us. By conquering fear and taking risks, our karmic pattern adjusts to the effects of new choices. At the end of every life, rather than having a monster waiting to devour our souls, we serve as our most severe critic in front of teacher guides. This is why karma is both just and merciful. With the help of our spiritual counselors and peers, we decide on the proper mode of justice for our conduct. Some people who believe in reincarnation also think if negative souls do not learn their lessons within a reasonable span of lives, they will be eliminated and replaced by more willing souls. My subjects deny this premise. There is no set path of self-discovery designed for all souls. As one subject told me, souls are assigned to Earth for the duration of the war. This means souls are given the time and opportunity to make changes for growth. Souls who continue to display negative attitudes through their human hosts must overcome these difficulties by continually making an effort to change. From what I have seen, no negative karma remains attached to a soul who is willing to work during their many lives on this planet. It is an open question whether a soul should be held entirely at fault for humanity's irrational, unsocialized, and destructive acts.
Yeah, here we go again. Here we go again. Yes, humanity is off its rocker, but it's pushed to that extent, okay? You have everything going on up there where you have this script, you have this plan for your life, you chart out a good chunk of your life along with personality traits. Then you come to, and so you may plan, this perfect life, and it may turn out okay. It may turn out pretty good, but it may also deviate because it seems that it's hard to take into account the insanity of the collective down here, as well as the people who hold power. They're not even people. The things that hold power over us and over, governments, whatever it may be, religions, all that stuff. And people lose their freaking minds along the way and lose themselves even further. So you can see how it is it's like a tumbleweed. It's just perpetually just flying all over the place, and who knows where you're going to land at the end of it, right? Just try to think about that. It's crazy.
Souls must learn to cope in different ways with each new human being assigned to them. The permanent identity of a soul stamps the human mind with a distinctive character which is individual to that soul. However, I find there is a strange dual nature between the soul mind and human brain. I will discuss this concept further in later chapters, after the reader learns more about the existence of souls in the spirit world.
Okay.
5. Orientation. After those entities who meet us during our homecoming have dispersed, we are ready to be taken to a space of healing. This will be followed by another stop, involving the soul's reorientation to a spiritual environment. In this place, we are often examined by our guide. I tend to call the cosmology of all spiritual locations as places or spaces, simply for convenient identification, because we are dealing with a non-physical universe. The similarity of descriptions among clients of what they do as souls at the next two combined stops is remarkable, although they do have different names for them. I hear such terms as chambers, travel berths, and interspaced stopover zones, but the most common is the place of healing. I think of the healing station as a field hospital, or MASH unit, for damaged souls coming off Earth's battlefields. I have selected a rather advanced male subject who has been through this revitalization process many times to describe the nature of this next stop. Case 11. Dr. N. After you leave the friends who greeted you following your death, where does your soul go next in the spirit world? Subject. I am alone for a while, moving through vast distances. Dr. N. Then what happens to you? Subject. I am being guided by a force I can't see, into a more enclosed space, an opening into a place of pure energy. Dr. N. What is this area like? Subject. For me, it is the vessel of healing. Dr. N. Give me as much detail as possible about what you experience here. Subject. I'm propelled in, and I see a bright warm beam. It reaches out to me as a stream of liquid energy. There is a vapor-like steam swirling around me at first, then gently touching my soul as if it were alive. Then it is absorbed into me as fire, and I am bathed and cleansed from my hurts. Dr. N. Is someone bathing you, or is this light beam enveloping you from out of nowhere? Subject. I am alone, but it is directed. My essence is being bathed, restoring me after my exposure to Earth. Dr. N.
Restoring you after their exposure to Earth. When I hear that, I almost feel like that could be part of the memory wipe in that aspect. And there's some weird stuff with the whole memory wipe with pre-birth memories, and it's just when people actually remember it, or with some regressions, it's what they say is that they were zapped, almost like it was like they were zapped, and it was the most horrifying thing they've ever experienced. Now, I'm not saying that's definitely what's going on here, but just let's listen to the wording one more time on that.
Bathing you? Or is this light beam enveloping you from out of nowhere?
Oh, and the other thing, yeah, that part totally crossed my, forgot it. Trying to find the right words. Went over my head. What the bathing of the light or the soul or the feeling, whatever it may be. There's also a few of the same ones where they talk about the zap where they had that enveloping feeling just prior, and then they were zapped of all their memories and saying it was the worst thing that they ever remember. But then there's a cutoff point where they don't remember past that period. So just throwing it out there. I do have those cases, which I'll go over, like I put in the description. I'm probably not going to get to those till the end of the year or early next year, but, keep an eye out. They'll eventually come out. I'm still compiling some because I want to show more examples that are not related to this book of people's accounts that are just random all over the internet.
Subject. I am alone, but it is directed. My essence is being bathed, restoring me after my exposure to Earth. Dr. N, I have heard this place is similar to taking a refreshing shower after a hard day's work. Subject laughs. After a lifetime of work. It's better, and you don't get wet either. Dr. N, you also don't have a physical body anymore, so how can this energy shower heal a soul? Subject, by reaching into my being. I'm so tired from my last life and with the body I had. Dr. N, are you saying the ravages of the physical body and the human mind leave an emotional mark on the soul after death? Subject, God, yes. My very expression, who I am as a being, was affected by the brain and body I occupied.
Yeah.
Dr. N, even though you are now separated from that body forever? Subject, each body leaves an imprint on you, at least for a while. There are some bodies I have had that I can never get away from altogether. Even though you are free of them, you keep some of the outstanding memories of your bodies in certain lives. Dr. N, okay, now I want you to finish with your shower of healing and tell me what you feel.
The memories that you're allowed to have retained. That's a key part of this. There are, just like we have the brain and the body as a governor down here, the same thing is going on up there. Same exact thing. We are more open up there. From everything I can tell, you know, obviously we have access to a lot more. We're in a completely different, you know, state as our pure essence, so to say. But part of that is being stolen and quarantined off, just like what's going on down here. Same thing. Just different body type, so to say, or your soul type, your light body, your true essence, however you want to word it.
Subject, I am suspended in the light. It permeates through my soul, washing out most of the negative viruses. It allows me to let go of the bonds of my last life, bringing about my transformation so I can become whole again. Dr. N, does the shower have the same effect upon everyone? Subject, pause. When I was younger and less experienced, I came here more damaged. The energy here seemed less effective because I didn't know how to use it to completely purge the negativity. I carried old wounds with me longer despite the healing energy. Dr. N, I think I understand. So what do you do now? Subject, when I am restored, I leave here and go to a quiet place to talk to my guide. This place I have come to call the shower of...
Alright, so, yeah, so you have basically what's going on here. Sure seems to point in this direction that it is the memory wipe. What they're specifically saying is that it's negative memories, which would make sense, right? In a way. Because they want you to keep coming back. And what do? They thrive off of your positive connections. So, yeah, when you're up there, okay? So when you're going through the process of, you know, the soul's school classes that they have, all that crap, before you know, basically, re-indoctrination camps that are going on up there, prior to coming down here, it would make sense that they rid you of some of those negative memories and any precursors that you may have figured out about, you know, important things like this, like the soul trap, things of that nature. So, yeah, just think about that aspect of it. And then afterwards, after this cleansing, then you're going to go and meet with your master. How fun. You know, your guide. That's great.
Healing is only a prelude for the rehabilitation of returning souls. The orientation stage, which immediately follows, especially with younger souls, involves a substantial counseling session with one's guide. The newly refreshed soul arrives at this station to undergo a debriefing of the life just ended. Orientation is also designed as an intake interview to provide further emotional release and readjustment back into the spirit world.
Readjustment.
People in hypnosis who discuss the type of counseling which goes on during orientation say their guides are gentle but probing. Imagine your favorite elementary school teacher and you have the idea.
Gentle but probing. And what do we talk about with this whole thing? It's a slow, not even necessarily slow. We don't know really how the speed in which all this occurs, but it is a prodding. It's a little annoyance thing. If you listen to the Parasite at the Astral Club, that's a good example of. There's a really short. I'll just say this: there was a former trucker who had passed away. He's in the astral realm. He lives by a lake in peace in a cottage, wants to be left alone, and a bunch of entities go up, knock on his door to try and get him to reincarnate. And there's just a lot of poking and prodding until they're able to figure out the trigger to get him back down here. And he's guilt tripping it. He's being guilt tripped with like a lure to come back and be with his daughter. It's sick stuff. Check it out if you want to see that in action. Parasite at the Astral Club. Okay, let's continue.
Think of a firm but concerned entity who knows all about your learning habits, your strong and weak points, and your fears, who is always ready to work with you as long as you continue to try. When you don't, everything remains stationary in your development. Nothing can be hidden by students from their spiritual teachers. No subterfuge or deception exists in a telepathic world. There are a multitude of differences in orientation scenes, depending upon the soul's individual makeup and their state of mind after the life just ended. Souls report their orientation often takes place in a room. The furnishings of these settings and the intensity of this first conference can vary after each life. The case below gives a brief example of an orientation scene which attests to the desire of higher forces to bring comfort to the returning soul. Case 12. Subject. At the center of this place I found my bedroom where I was so happy as a child. I see my rose-covered wallpaper and four-poster bed with the squeaky springs under a thick pink quilt made for me by my grandmother. My grandmother and I used to have heart-to-heart chats whenever I was troubled, and she is here too, just sitting on the edge of my bed with my favorite stuffed animals around her, waiting for me. Her wrinkled face is full of love as always. After a while, I see she is actually my guide, Amorphous. I talk to Amorphous about the sad and happy times of the life I have finished. I know I made mistakes, but she is so kind to me. We laugh and cry together while I reminisce. Then we discuss all the things I didn't do that I might have done with my life. But in the end, it's okay. She knows I must rest in this beautiful world. I'm going to relax. I don't care if I ever go back to Earth again, because my real home is here. Apparently, the more advanced souls do not require any orientation at this stage. This does not mean that 10% of my clients in this category just sail right by their guides with a wave upon their return from Earth. Everybody is held accountable for their past lives. Performance is judged upon how each individual interpreted and acted upon their life roles. Intake interviews for the advanced souls are conducted with master teachers later. The less experienced entities are usually given special attention by counselors because the abrupt transition from the physical to a spiritual form is more difficult for them. The next case I have selected has a more in-depth therapeutic spiritual orientation. The exploration of attitudes and feelings with a view to reorienting future behavior is typical of guides. The client in case 13 is a strong, imposing 32-year-old woman of above-average height and weight. Dressed in jeans, boots, and a loose-fitting sweatshirt, Hester arrived at my office one day in a state of agitation. Her presenting problems fell into three parts. She was dissatisfied with her life as a successful real estate broker as being too materialistic and unfulfilling. Hester also felt she lacked feminine sexuality. She mentioned having a closet full of beautiful clothes which were hateful to wear. This client then told me how she had easily manipulated men all her life because there is a male aggression about me which also makes me feel incomplete as a woman. As a young girl, she avoided dolls and wearing dresses because she was more interested in competitive sports with boys. Her masculine feelings had not changed with age, although she had found a man who became her husband because he accepted her dominance in their relationship. Hester said she enjoyed sex with him as long as she was in physical control, and that he found this exciting. In addition, my client complained of headaches on the right side of her head above the ear, which after extensive medical examinations, doctors had attributed to stress. During our session, I learned this subject had experienced a recent series of male lives, culminating with a short life as a prosecuting attorney called Ross Felden in the state of Oklahoma during the 1880s. As Ross, my client had committed suicide at age 33 in a hotel room by shooting himself in the head. Ross was in despair over the direction his life had taken as a courtroom prosecutor. As the dialogue progresses, the reader will notice displays of intense emotion. Regression therapists call this heightened response, being in a state of revivification, meaning to give new life, as opposed to the alternative trance state, where subjects are observer participants. Case 13. Dr. N. Now that you have left the shower of healing, where are you going? Subject, apprehensively. To see my advisor. Dr. N. And who is that? Subject, pause. Dees. No, his name is Clodies. Dr. N. Did you talk to Clodies when you entered the spirit world? Subject. I wasn't ready yet. I just wanted to see my parents. Dr. N. Why are you going to see Clodies now? Subject. I am going to have to make some kind of accounting of myself. We go through this after all my lives, but this time I'm really in the soup. Dr. N. Why? Subject. Because I killed myself. Dr. N. When a person kills himself on Earth, does this mean they will receive some sort of punishment as a spirit? Subject. No, there is no such thing here as punishment. That's an Earth condition. Clodies will be disappointed that I bailed out early and didn't have the courage to face my difficulties. By choosing to die as I did, means I have to come back later and deal with the same thing all over again in a different life. I just wasted a lot of time by checking out early. Dr. N. So, no one will condemn you for committing suicide? Subject reflects for a moment. Well, my friends won't give me any pats on the back either. I feel sadness at what I did. Note, this is the usual spiritual attitude toward suicide, but I want to add that those who escape from chronic physical pain or almost total incapacity on Earth by killing themselves feel no remorse as souls. Their guides and friends also have a more accepting view toward this motivation for suicide. Dr. N. All right. Let's proceed into your conference with Clodies. First, describe your surroundings as you enter this space to see your advisor. Subject. I go into a room with walls. Laughs. Oh, it's the buckhorn. Dr. N. What's that? Subject. A great cattleman's bar in Oklahoma. I was happy as a patron there. Friendly atmosphere. Beautiful wood paneling. The stuffed leather chairs. Pause. I see Clodies is sitting at one of the tables waiting for me. Now we are going to talk. Dr. N. How do you account for an Oklahoma bar in the spirit world? Subject. It's one of the nice things they do for you to ease your mind, but that's where it ends. Then with a deep sigh. This talk is not going to be like a party at the bar. Dr. N. You sound a little depressed at the prospect of an intimate conversation with your guide about your last life. Subject, defensively. Because I blew it. I have to see him to explain why things didn't work out. Life is so hard. I tried to do it right, but... Dr. N. Do what right? Subject, with anguish. I had an agreement with Clodes to work on setting goals and then following through. He had expectations for me as Ross. Damn! Now I have to face him with this. Dr. N. You don't feel you met the contract you had with your advisor about lessons to be learned as Ross? Subject, impatiently. No, I was terrible. And of course I'll have to do it all over again. We never seem to get it perfect. Pause. You know, if it weren't for Earth's beauty, the birds, flowers, trees, I would never go back. It's too much trouble. Dr. N. I can see you are upset, but don't you think... Subject breaks in with agitation. You can't get away with a thing either. Everybody here knows you so well. There is nothing I can keep from Clodes. Dr. N. I want you to take a deep breath and go further into the buckhorn bar, and tell me what you do. Subject. Subject gulps and squares her shoulders. I float in and sit down across from Clodes at a round table near the front of the bar. Dr. N. Now that you are near Clodes, do you think he is as upset as you are over this past life? Subject. No. I'm more upset with myself over what I did and didn't do, and he knows that. Advisors can be displeased, but they don't humiliate us. They're too superior for that. The counseling input of a directive guide gives the healing process of our soul a boost during orientation, but that does not mean the defensive barriers to progress are completely removed. The painful emotional memories from our past do not die as easily as our bodies. Hester must see her negative past life script as Ross clearly, without distorted perceptions. Recreating spiritual orientation scenes during hypnosis assists me as a therapist. I have found the techniques of psychodramatic role-playing to be useful in exposing feelings and old beliefs related to current behavior. Case 13 had quite a long orientation, which I have condensed. At this juncture of the case, I shifted my questioning to involve the subject's guide. As the proceedings unfold with Ross Felden's life, I will take the role of a third-party intermediary between Ross and Clodes. Within this counseling mode, I also want to initiate a role transference, where Hester, Ross, will speak the thoughts of Clodes. The integration of a subject with their guide is a means of eliciting assistance from these higher entities, and bringing problems into sharper focus. I sometimes sense even my own guide is directing me in these sessions. I am cautious about summoning up guides without good cause. Facilitating communication directly with a client's guide always has an uncertain outcome. If my intrusion is clumsy or unnecessary, guides will block a subject's response by silence, or use metaphoric language which is obscure. I have had guides speak through a subject's vocal cords in raspy tones, which are so discordant I can hardly understand the responses to questions. When subjects talk for their guides, rather than guides speaking for themselves through the subject, usually the cadence of speech is not as broken. In this case, Clodes comes through Hester Ross easily, and allows me some latitude in working with his client. Dr. N. Ross, we both need to understand what is happening psychologically to you right from the start of your orientation with Clodes. I want you to assist me. Are you willing to do this? Subject. Yes, I am. Dr. N. Good. And now you are going to be able to do something unusual. On the count of 3, you will have the ability to assume the dual roles of Clodes and yourself. This ability will enable you to speak to me about your thoughts and those of your guide as well. It will seem that you will actually become your guide when I question you. Are you ready? Subject, with hesitation. I think so. Dr. N, rapidly. 1, 2, 3. I place my palm on the subject's forehead to stimulate the transference. Now, be Clodes speaking his thoughts through you. You are sitting at a table across from the soul of Ross Felden. What do you say to him? Quickly. I want the subject to react without thinking critically about the difficulty of my command. Subject. Subject reacts slowly, speaking as his own guide. You know, you could have done better. Dr. N, quickly now, be Ross Felden again. Move to the other side of the table and answer Clodes.
Hear the guilt right there?
Subject. I tried, but I fell short of the goal. Dr. N, switch places again. Become the voice of Clodes' thoughts and answer Ross, quickly. Subject. If you could change anything about your life, what would it be? Dr. N, respond as Ross. Subject. Not to be corrupted by power and money. Dr. N, answer as Clodes. Subject. Why did you let these things detract from your original commitment? Dr. N, I lower my voice. You are doing fine. Keep switching chairs back and forth at the table. Now answer your guide's question. Subject. I wanted to belong, to feel important in the community, to rise above others and be admired for my strength. Dr. N, respond as Clodes. Subject. Especially by women. I observed you tried to dominate them sexually as well, making conquests without attachments. Dr. N, speak as Ross. Subject. Yes, that's true. Shakes head from side to side. I don't have to explain. You know everything anyway. Dr. N, respond as Clodes. Subject. Oh, but you do. You must bring your self-awareness to bear on these matters. Dr. N, answer as Ross. Subject, defiantly. If I hadn't exerted power over these people, they would have controlled me. Dr. N, respond as Clodes. Subject. This lacks merit and was unworthy of you. What you became is not how you started. We chose your parents carefully. Note, the Felden family were farmers of modest means.
See, you chose your parents carefully.
Who displayed honesty, forbearance, and sacrificed much so Ross could study law. Dr. N, answer as Ross. Subject, in a rush. Yes, I know. They brought me up to be idealistic, to help the little guy, and I wanted this too. But it didn't work for me. You saw what happened. I was in debt when I began as a lawyer. Ineffective, of no consequence. I didn't want to be poor anymore, defending people who couldn't pay me. I hated the farm, the pigs and the cows. I liked being around substantial people, and when I joined the establishment as a prosecutor, I had the idea of reforming the system and helping farm people. It was the system that was wrong. Dr. N, respond as Clodes. Subject. Ah, you were corrupted by the system. Explain this to me. Dr. N, answer as Ross. Subject, hotly. People had to pay fines they couldn't afford. Others I sent to jail because of offenses they didn't mean to commit. Others I had hung. Voice breaks. I became a legal killer. Dr. N, respond as Clodes. Subject. Why did you feel responsible for prosecuting criminals who were guilty of hurting others? Dr. N, answer as Ross. Subject. Few of those... Most were just ordinary people like my parents who got caught up in the system, needing money to survive. And there were those who were sick in the head. Dr. N, respond as Clodes. Subject. What about the victims of the people you prosecuted? Didn't you choose a life of law to help society and to make the farms and the towns safer with justice? Dr. N, answer as Ross. Subject, loudly. Don't you see? It didn't work for me. I was turned into a murderer by a primitive society. Dr. N, respond as Clodes. Subject. And so you murdered yourself? Dr. N, answer as Ross. Subject. I got off track. I couldn't go back to being a nobody, and I couldn't go forward. Dr. N. Respond as Clodes. Subject. Too easily you became a participant with those whose motivations were for personal gain and notoriety. This was not you. Why did you hide from yourself? Dr. N. Answer as Ross. Subject, with anger. Why didn't you help me more when I started as a public defender?
Was there a delay back there? Sorry to interrupt. It sounded like my computer is freezing up because it is getting kind of hot. If you guys could just let me know in the chat, I apologize. Okay, no delay, good. Alright, thanks. Sorry about that.
Dr. N. Respond as Clodes. Subject. What benefit do you get from thinking I should pick you up at every turn? Dr. N. I ask Hester to respond as Ross, but when she remains silent after the last question, I step in. Ross, if I may interrupt, I believe Clodes is inquiring into the payoff for you from both the pain you feel now and strokes you get from blaming him over your last life. Subject. Pause. Wanting sympathy, I guess. Dr. N. Okay. Respond as Clodes to this thought. Subject. Very slowly. What more would you have me do? You didn't reach far enough inside yourself. I placed thoughts in your mind of temperance, moderation, responsibility, original goals, your parents' love. You ignored these thoughts and were stubborn to alternative action. Subject. Ross responds without my command. I know I missed the signs you set up. I wasted opportunities. I was afraid.
Yeah, see the signs you set up. So again, this goes with the life script. You're going to hear more and more of this specific type of thing, or right around the same thing, where it's again, there are roadmaps, there are cues that we are given in life to veer us in a certain direction that is rooted in our life script that we choose and are manipulated into along the way, that again plays itself out to some extent once we're down here. So it's really interesting to hear that specific thing in this case, and you'll hear more of it.
Dr. N. Respond as Clodes to your statement. Subject. What do you value most about who you are? Dr. N. Answer your guide. Subject. That I had the desire to change things on Earth. I started with wanting to make a difference for the people of Earth. Dr. N. Respond as Clodes. Subject. You left that assignment early, and now I see you missing opportunities again. Being afraid to take risks, taking paths which damage you, trying to become someone who is not you, and there is sadness again. Recreating the orientation stage does not produce abrupt transitions during my hypnosis sessions. While Case 13 is speaking as Clodes, notice how her responses take on a more lucid and decisive quality, which is different from either my client Hester or her former self as Ross. I am not always successful with my subjects translating their guide's comments so insightfully in former spiritual orientations. Nevertheless, past life memories often spill over into contemporary problems, in whatever spiritual setting is selected. Whether my subject or her guide actually directed the conversation in the Buckhorn bar scene, while I moved the time frame around, does not matter to me. After all, Ross Felden as a person is dead. But Hester is caught in the same quagmire. and I want to do what I can to break this destructive pattern of behavior. I spend a few minutes reviewing with this subject what her guide has indicated about lack of self-concept, alienation, and lost values. After asking Clodies for his continued assistance, I close the orientation scene and immediately take Hester to a later spiritual stage, just before her rebirth today. Dr. N. With all the knowledge of who you were as Ross, and having a greater understanding of your real spiritual identity after your stay in the spirit world, why did you choose your current body? Subject. I chose to be a woman so people would not feel intimidated by me. Dr. N. Really? Then why did you take the body of such a strong, forceful woman in the 20th century? Subject. They won't see a prosecuting attorney dressed in black in a courtroom. This time I am a surprise package. Dr. N. A surprise package? What does that mean? Subject. As a woman, I knew I would be less intimidating to men. I can catch them off guard and scare them to death. Dr. N. What kind of men? Subject. The big guys. The power structure in society. Catch them when they are lulled into a false sense of security because I'm a woman. Dr. N. Catch them and do what? Subject. Drives her right fist into the left palm. Nail them. To save the little guy from the sharks who want to eat up all the small fish in this world. Dr. N. I move my subject into the present while she remains in the superconscious state. Let me understand your reason for choosing to be a woman in this life. You wanted to help the same sort of people who you were unable to help as a man in your previous life. Is this correct? Subject, sadly. Yeah, but it's not the best way. It's not working out for me like I thought. I'm still too strong and macho. Energy is pouring out of me in the wrong direction. Dr. N. What wrong direction? Subject, wistfully. I'm doing it again. Misusing people. I chose the body of a woman who is intimidating to men, and I don't feel like a woman. Dr. N. Give me an example. Subject. Sexually and in business. I'm in the power game again. Pushing aside principles. Getting off track as before, as Ross. This time I manipulate real estate deals. I'm too interested in acquiring money. I want status. Dr. N. And how does this hurt you, Hester? Subject. The influence of money and position is a drug to me as it was in my last life. My being a woman now has done nothing to change my desire to control people.
Yeah, you see, like, you could just tell how lost this person is. Completely lost. And just in the depths of materialism, and can't see their way out. And that's a lot of our society in a nutshell. And the materialism, the money, the need for this, the need for that is endless. And that's how that's just more ways that everything, all these attachments are what, really gets the hooks in us and keeps us in this perpetual cycle involving the soul trap.
So stupid. Dr. N. Then do you think your motivations were wrong in choosing to be a female? Subject. Yes. I do feel more natural living as a man. But I thought as a woman this time around I would be more subtle. I wanted this chance to try again in a different sex, and Clodies let me take it. Client slumps down in her chair. What a blunder. Dr. N. Don't you think you are being a little hard on yourself, Hester? I have the sense you also chose to be a woman because you wanted a woman's insight and intuition to give you a different perspective to tackle your lessons. You can have masculine energy, if you want to call it that, and still be feminine. Before finishing this case, I should touch on the issue of homosexuality. Most of my subjects select the bodies of one gender over another 75% of the time. This pattern is true of all but the advanced souls, who maintain more of a balance in choosing to be men and women. A gender preference by a majority of earthbound souls does not mean they are unhappy the other 25% of the time as males or females. Hester is not necessarily gay or bisexual because of her body choice. Homosexuals may or may not be comfortable with their anatomy as humans. When I do have a client who is gay, they often ask if their homosexuality is the result of choosing to be the wrong sex in this life. When their sessions are over, this inquiry is usually answered. Regardless of the circumstances which lead souls to make gender choices, this decision was made before arriving on Earth. Sometimes I find that gay people have chosen in advance of their current lives to experiment with a sex that was seldom used in former lives. Being gay carries a sexual stigma in our society, which presents a more difficult road in life. When this road is chosen by one of my clients, it can usually be traced to a karmic need to accelerate personal understanding of the complex differences in gender identity, as related to certain events in their past. Case 13 chose to be a woman in this life to try and get over the stumbling blocks experienced as Ross Felden. Would Hester have benefited from knowing about her past as Ross from birth, rather than having to wait over 30 years and undergo hypnosis? Having no conscious memory of our former existences is called amnesia. This human condition is perplexing to people attracted to reincarnation. Why should we have to grope around in life trying to figure out who we are and what we are supposed to do, and wondering if some spiritual divinity really cares about us? I closed my session with this woman by asking about her amnesia. Dr. N, why do you think you had no conscious memory about your life as Ross Felden? Subject, when we choose a body and make a plan before coming back to Earth, there is an agreement with our advisors.
Yeah, an agreement with our advisors. Let's see what they have to say.
Dr. N, an agreement about what? Subject, we agree not to remember other lives. Dr.
Oh, isn't that cute? Yeah. Because it's such a learning experience. Yeah. It's just ridiculous. Ridiculous. Yeah, we agree.
N, why? Subject, learning from a blank state is better than knowing in advance what could happen to you because of what you did before.
Okay, so here we are. We're at high-level tard mode now. This is how often do we hear this? I mean, it's just all the time. You know, Earth's a learning experience, and for the people that do know about reincarnation but are not really up on this side of things with Soul Trap, you'll hear it constantly, like, oh, well, you know, if you had the memory of this, or if you had the memory of that, or if you were able to do this, it would be too much coming in all at once, and you wouldn't live it out this way, and blah, blah. I mean, excuses constantly. It's just all the time. So let's go on. Earth's a learning experience.
Dr. N, but wouldn't knowing about your past life mistakes be valuable in avoiding the same pitfalls in this life?
Oh my God, a logical question. Oh, how dare you, sir?
Subject, if people knew all about their past, many might pay too much attention to it rather than trying out new approaches to the same problem. The new life must be taken seriously.
Yes.
Dr. N,
seriousness.
Are there any other reasons? Subject, pause. Without having old memories, our advisors say there is less preoccupation for trying to avenge the past, to get even for the wrongs done to you.
Oh.
Dr. N, well, it seems to me that so far, this has been part of the motivation and conduct in your life as Hester. Subject, forcefully, that's why I came to you. Dr. N, and do you still think a total blackout of our eternal spiritual life on Earth is essential to progress?
Good question.
Subject, normally, yes, but it's not a total blackout.
Normally, yes. It's not a total blackout because they only allow you certain memories. And how many of us here actually have memories? How many of us have maybe a little memory? How much of us have memories that have value to anything of importance as far as it pertains to us, our past, and our overall existence and what this place is about? We know none of that when we are born ignorant. Just going to rewind about 5 seconds because I cut it off.
Subject, forcefully. That's why I came to you. Dr. N. And do you still think a total blackout of our eternal spiritual life on Earth is essential to progress? Subject. Normally, yes, but it's not a total blackout. We get flashes from dreams during times of crisis. People have an inner knowing of what direction to take when it is necessary. And sometimes your friends can fudge a little.
So, yeah. We get some in dreams, that we really don't remember. And during traumatic periods of our lives, because, they love feasting off of that. And what the system does with those traumatic moments when you have things like that is it gives you a false sense of comfort to make you rationalize the trauma and make you more spiritually open, more you might have something where you feel like you're receiving a message from God or Jesus or who knows what, or a past family member. That's another one where they're looking over you and trying to help you. It's all horse shit. It's all deception and all manipulation. Ridiculous.
Dreams during times of crisis. People have an inner knowing of what direction to take when it is necessary. And sometimes your friends can fudge a little. Dr. N. By friends, you mean entities from the spirit world? Subject.
Admitting deception right there. Your friends can fudge things.
Hints. By flashing ideas. I've done it. Dr. N. Nevertheless, you had to come to me to unlock your conscious amnesia. Subject. Pause. We have the capacity to know when it is necessary. I was ready for change when I heard about you. Clodies allowed me to see the past with you.
Where do we... whatever, let's just go. Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Because it was to my benefit. Dr. N. Otherwise your amnesia would have remained intact. Subject. Yes, that would have meant I wasn't supposed to know certain things yet. In my opinion, when clients are unable to go into hypnosis at any given time, or if they have only sketchy memories in trance, there is a reason for this blockage. This does not mean these people have no past memories, just that they are not ready to have them exposed.
Oh, you're not ready. You don't deserve it. What if we took a poll around the earth of every single living human being and asked them, what do you remember? What do you remember? I wonder what, the results would be. How big would it be? 85, 90, maybe even more. 95% have probably zero recollection of anything in their past lives. And then what? Maybe you have 5%. Maybe we can attribute that to who knows what. Some of it could be something like this with past life regressions. It's just ridiculous. Everyone is under the veil of forgetfulness. Everybody. With the exception of maybe some of the controllers who need those because they are agents of the system.
My client knew something was hindering her growth and wanted it revealed. The superconscious identity of the soul houses our continuous memory, including goals. When the time in our lives is appropriate, we must harmonize human material needs with our soul's purpose for being here.
Oh, isn't that cute?
I try to take a common sense approach in bringing past and present experiences into alignment. Our eternal identity never leaves us alone in the bodies we choose, despite our current status. In reflection, meditation, or prayer, The memories of who we really are do filter down to us in selective thought each day, in small intuitive ways, through the cloud of amnesia.
Can you guys hear the lawnmower in the background? Stupid lawnmowers here again.
We are given clues for the justification of our being. By desensitizing the source of her headaches, I completed my session with Hester by reinforcing her choice to be a woman for reasons other than intimidating men. I gave her permission to lower her defenses a little and be less aggressive. We discussed options for restructuring occupational goals toward the helping professions and the possibilities of volunteer service work. She was finally able to see her life today as a great opportunity for learning rather than a failure of gender choice. After a case is completed, I never cease to admire the brutal honesty of souls. When a soul has led a productive life beneficial to themselves and those around them, I notice they return to the spirit world with enthusiasm. However, when subjects like Case 13 report they wasted a past life, especially from early suicide, then they describe going back rather dejected. When orientation is upsetting to a subject, I find an underlying reason is the abruptness with which a soul is once again in full possession of all past knowledge. After physical death, unencumbered by a human body, the soul has a sudden influx of perception. The stupid things we did in life hit us hard in orientation. I see more relaxation and greater clarity of thought as I move my subjects further into the spirit world. Souls are created in a positive matrix of such love and wisdom that when a soul starts to come to a planet like Earth and join the physical beings who have evolved from a primitive state, the violence is a shock. Humans have the raw negative emotions of anger and hate as an outgrowth of their fear and pain, connected with survival going back to the Stone Age. Both positive and negative emotions are mixed between soul and host for their mutual benefit. If a soul
and host
only knew love and peace, it would gain no insight and never truly appreciate the value of these positive feelings.
And we'd never appreciate the value of insanity and psychos and debauchery and just overall just nastiness that's going on here.
The test of reincarnation for a soul coming to Earth is the conquering of fear in a human body. A soul grows by trying to overcome all negative emotions connected to fear through perseverance in many lifetimes, often returning to the spirit world bruised or hurt, as Case 13 indicated. Some of this negativity can be retained even in the spirit world, and may reappear in another life with a new body. On the other hand, there is a trade-off. It's in joy and unabashed pleasure that the true nature of an individual soul is revealed on Earth in the face of a happy human being. Orientation conferences with our guides allow us to begin the long process of self-evaluation between lives. Soon we will have another conference, this time with more master beings in attendance. In the last chapter, I referred to the ancient Egyptian tradition of newly deceased souls being taken into a hall of judgment to account for their past lives. In one form or another, the concept of a torturous courtroom trial awaiting us right after death has been part of the religious belief system of many cultures.
The Hall of Judgment. The Hall of Guilt. Be afraid. You are horrible. You're awful. And you're just going to have to keep coming back here until you get it right. You have to be perfect. There's no way to do that. There's no way to do that, just so everybody knows. Just for anyone on the fence, there's no way to do that. It doesn't work. The body and mind make it inherently impossible to do such things. And then the sooner we all learn that, the better. Because that's how a major piece of how this place runs. Karma and sinning. Big manipulation tool.
Occasionally, a susceptible individual in a traumatic situation will say they had an out-of-body experience with nightmarish visions of being taken by frightening specters into an afterlife of darkness, where they were sentenced in front of demonic judges. In these cases, I suspect a strong preconditioned belief system of hell. In the quiet, relaxing state of hypnosis, with continuity on all mental levels, my subjects report that the initial orientation session with their guides prepares them to go before a panel of superior beings. However, the words courtroom and trial are not used to describe these proceedings. A number of my cases have called these wise beings, directors, and even judges, but most refer to them as a council of masters or elders. This board of review is generally composed of between 3 and 7 members, and since souls appear before them after arriving at their home base, I will go into this conference in more detail at the end of the next chapter. All soul evaluation conferences, be they with our guides, peers, or a panel of masters, have one thing in common. The feedback and past life analysis we receive in terms of judgment is based upon the original intent of our choices as much as the actions of a lifetime. Our motivations are questioned and criticized, but not condemned in such a way as to make us suffer. As I explained in Chapter 4, this does not mean souls are exonerated for their acts which harmed others simply because they are sorry. Karmic payment will come in a future life. I have been told that our spiritual masters constantly remind us that because the human brain does not have an innate moral sense of ethics, conscience is the soul's responsibility.
Oh, isn't that cute? So again, you're down here with the body. It's flawed, inherently flawed, and you're gonna fall into something and do something wrong, probably multiple times in your life that you regret. You have to forgive yourself, ask for forgiveness from the one that you hurt, and if they give it to you or not, it doesn't matter. You move on, and you just continue to be the best person you can be because you want to be, not because you're worried about some sin or karma bullshit.
Less, there is overwhelming forgiveness in the spirit world. This world is ageless, and so too are our learning tasks. We will be given other chances in our struggle for growth. When the initial conference with our guide is over, we leave the place of orientation and join a coordinated flow of activity involving the transit of enormous numbers of other souls into a kind of central receiving station.
Yeah, the receiving station. We've heard this before. So here we go.
6. Transition. All souls, regardless of experience, eventually arrive at a central port in the spirit world, which I call the staging area. I have said there are variations in the speed of soul movement right after death, depending upon spiritual maturity. Once past the orientation station, there seems to be no further travel detours for anyone entering this space of the spirit world. Apparently, large numbers of returning souls are conveyed in a spiritual form of mass transit. Sometimes, souls are escorted by their guides to this area. I find this practice is especially true for the younger souls. Others are directed through by an unseen force, which pulls them into the staging area and then beyond to waiting entities. From what I am able to determine, accompaniment by other entities depends upon the volition of one's guide. In most cases, haste is not an issue, but souls do not dawdle along on this leg of their journey. The feelings we have along this path depend on our state of mind after each life.
It's ridiculous. You guys hearing this stuff, it's all laid out there. They're just talking and giving you this information on a platter. They really are. I mean, and this one book is just, and it's got a great host of examples about what's really going on in the background, but you can go and look at these things for yourself across the net. There's tons of these testimonies. I hate Facebook, but I don't even have one, but I used a friend's of mine's account and ran across a good pre-birth memory group, and then also past life regression group. and you start reading all this stuff. And then there's some websites too. I'll try and get some other resources together towards the end of the series and pop them all up there so you guys can take a look and read through some yourself. And like I said, I have a future video end of the year, early next year, where I'm going to be showing some really juicy ones, and they all link in together. They all have these qualities of, you know, judgment and council of elders and receiving stations and the wiping of memories, which they claim, you know, are just mostly the negative ones, blah blah blah, etc., etc. Let's continue.
The assembly and transfer of souls really involves two phases. The staging area is not an encampment space. Spirits are brought in, collected, and then projected out to their proper final destinations. When I hear accounts of this particular junction, I visualize myself walking with large numbers of travelers through the central terminal of a metropolitan airport, which has the capacity to fly all of us out in any direction. One of my clients described the staging area as resembling the hub of a great wagon wheel, where we are transported from a center along the spokes to our designated places. My subjects say this region appears to them as having a large number of unacquainted spirits moving in and out of the hub in an efficient manner with no congestion. Another person called this area the Los Angeles Freeway without gridlock. There may be other similar wheel hubs with freeway-type on- and off-ramps in the spirit world, but each client considers their own route to and from this center to be the only one. The observations I hear about the nature of the spirit world when entering the staging area have definitely changed from those first impressions of layering and foggy stratification. It is as if the soul is now traveling through the loosely wound arms of a mighty galactic cloud into a more unified celestial field. While their spirits hover in the open arena of the staging area, preparing for further transport out to prescribed spaces, I enjoy listening to the excitement in the voices of my subjects. They are dazzled by an eternal world spread out before them and believe that somewhere within lies the nucleus of creation. When they look at the fully opened canopy around them, subjects will state that the spirit world appears to be a varied luminescence. I hear nothing about the inky blackness we associate with deep space. The gatherings of souls that clients see in the foreground in this amphitheater appear as myriads of sharp star lights, all going in different directions. Some move fast, while others drift. The more distant energy concentrations have been pictured as islands of misty veils. I am told the most outstanding characteristic of the spirit world is a continuous feeling of a powerful mental force directing everything in uncanny harmony. People say this is a place of pure thought. Thought takes many forms. It is at this vantage point in their return that souls begin to anticipate meeting others who wait for them. A few of these companions may have already been seen at the gateway, but most have not. Without exception, souls who wish to contact each other, especially when on the move, do so by just thinking of the entity they want. Suddenly, the individual called will appear in the soul mind of the traveler. These telepathic communications by the energy of all spiritual entities allow for a non-visual affinity, while two energy forms who actually come near one another provide a more direct connection. There is uniformity in the accounts of my subjects as to their manner of spiritual travel, routes, and destinations, although what they see along the way is distinctive with each person. I searched through my case files to find a subject whose experiences along this route to an ultimate spiritual destination was both descriptive and yet representative of what many others have told me. I selected an insightful 41-year-old graphic designer with a mature soul. This man's soul had traveled over this course many times between a long span of lives. Case 14. Dr. N. You are now ready to begin the final portion of your homeward journey toward the place where your soul belongs in the spirit world. On the count of 3, All the details of this final leg of your travels will become clear to you. It will be easy for you to report on everything you see, because you are familiar with the route. Are you ready? Subject: Yes. Dr. N, raising my voice to a commanding tone. 1. We are getting started. 2. Your soul has now moved out of the area of orientation. 3. Quickly, what is your first impression? Subject: Distances are unlimited. Endless space. Forever. Dr. N, so are you telling me the spirit world is endless? Subject: Long pause. To be honest, from where I am floating, it looks endless. But when I begin to really move, it changes. Dr. N, changes how? Subject: Well, everything remains formless, but when I am gliding faster, I see I'm moving inside a gigantic bowl, turned upside down. I don't know where the rims of the bowl are, or even if any exist. Dr. N, then movement gives you the sense of a spherical spirit world? Subject: Yes, but it's only a feeling of enclosed uniformity when I am moving rapidly. Dr. N, why does rapid movement, your speed, give you the feeling of being in a bowl? Subject: Long pause. It's strange. Although everything appears to go on straight when my soul is drifting, that changes to a feeling of roundness when I am moving fast on a line of contact. Dr. N, what do you mean by a line of contact? Subject: Towards a specific destination. Dr. N, how does moving with speed on a given line of travel change your observational perceptions of the spirit world to a feeling it is round? Subject: Because with speed the lines seem to bend. They curve in a more obvious direction for me and give me less freedom of movement. Note: other subjects, who are also disposed toward linear descriptions, speak of traveling along directional force lines, which have the spatial properties of a grid system. One person called them vibrational strings. Dr. N, by less freedom, do you mean less personal control? Subject: Yes. Dr. N, can you more precisely describe the movement of your soul along these curving contact lines? Subject: It's just more purposeful. When my soul is being directed someplace on a line, it's like I'm in a current of white water, only not as thick as water, because the current is lighter than air. Dr. N, then in this spiritual atmosphere, you don't have the sense of density such as in water? Subject: No, I don't. But what I am trying to say is I'm being carried along as if I were in a current underwater. Dr. N, why do you think this is so? Subject: Well, it's as if we are all swimming, being carried along in a swift current which we can't control, under somebody's direction.
A swift
up
current
and down from each other.
A swift current that we can't control. It's by somebody else.
Subject:
Here we go.
Well, it's as if we are all swimming, being carried along in a swift current which we can't control, under somebody's direction.
Somebody's direction.
Up and down from each other in space, with nothing solid around us. Dr. N, do you see other souls traveling in a purposeful way above and below you? Subject: Yes. It's as if we start in a stream, and then all of us returning from death are pulled into a great river together. Dr. N, when do the numbers of returning souls seem the highest to you? Subject: When the rivers converge into... I can't describe it. Dr. N, please try. Subject: Pause. We are gathered into a sea where all of us swirl around in slow motion. Then I feel as though I'm being pulled away to a small tributary again, and it's quieter. Further from the thoughts of so many minds. Going to the ones I know. Dr. N. Later, in your normal travels as a soul, is it the same as being propelled around in streams and rivers as you have just described? Subject. No, not at all.
This is like kind of a different zone where they're collectively in this, whatever the hell you want to call it, a bubble or whatever it is, and there's like a grid type thing going on, and almost as if they're just all stuck together and they're dispersed out into whatever groups that they have, but without control.
Different. We're like salmon going up to spawn, returning home. Once we get there, we are not pushed about this way. Then we can drift. Dr. N. Who is doing the pushing while you are being taken home? Subject. Higher entities. The ones in charge of our movements to get us home.
Alright, so again, something else is in charge of their movements to send them home. Okay? They're not in control. They have no control. And that's what this whole damn book shows. And along with all the other subtopics related to the soul trap. It shows a lack of control and always, not always, but, well, pretty much always, something telling them what to do, or information being received in the form of direction and orders by something not of themselves, an entity of some kind.
Dr. N. Entities such as your guide. Subject. Above him, I think. Dr. N. What else are you feeling at this moment? Subject. Peace. There is such peace you never want to leave again. Dr. N. Anything more? Subject. Oh, I have some anticipation, too, while moving slowly with the energy current. Dr. N. All right. Now I want you to continue to move further along with the current of energy, closer to the area where you are supposed to go. Look around carefully, and tell me what you see. Subject. I see a variety of lights, in patches, separated from each other by galleries. Dr. N. By galleries, do you mean a series of enclosures? Subject. More like a long corridor, bulging out in places, stretching out away from me into the distance. Dr. N. And the lights? Subject. They are people. The souls of people within the bulging galleries reflecting light outward to me. That's what I'm seeing. Patches of lights bobbing around. Dr. N. Are these clusters of people structurally separated from each other in the bulges along the corridor? Subject. No, there are no walls here. Nothing is structural with angles and corners. It's hard for me to explain exactly. Dr. N. You are doing fine. Now I want you to tell me what separates the light clusters from each other along this corridor you are describing. Subject. The people are divided by thin, wispy filaments, making the light milky like the transparency of frosted glass. There is an incandescent glow from their energy as I pass by. Dr. N. How do you see individual souls within the clusters? Subject. Pause. As light dots. I see masses of dots hanging in clumps, as hanging grapes all lit up. Dr. N. Do these clumps represent various groups of soul energy masses with space between them? Subject. Yes. They are separated into small groups. I am going to my own clump. Dr. N. What else do you feel about them as you pass by on the way to your cluster? Subject. I can feel their thoughts reaching out, so varied. But together, too. Such harmony, but... Stops. Dr. N, go on. Subject. I don't know the ones I'm passing now. It doesn't matter. Dr. N. Okay, let's pass on by these clusters which seem to bulge out along a corridor. Give me an example of what the whole thing looks like to you from a distance. Subject. Laughs. A long glowworm. Its sides bulging in and out. The movement is rhythmic. Dr. N. You mean the corridor itself appears to move? Subject. Yes, parts of it. Swaying as a ribbon in the breeze while I am going further away. Dr. N. Continue floating and tell me what happens to you next. Subject. Pause. I'm at the edge of another corridor. I'm slowing down. Dr. N. Why? Subject. Grows excited. Because... Oh, good. I'm coming in towards the site where my friends are attached. Dr. N. And how do you feel at this moment?
All excited.
Subject. Fantastic. There's a familiar pulling of minds reaching out to me.
A familiar pulling of minds reaching out. So you have like the, just like what was going on earlier, you have that group think dynamic where your soul group, so to say, is impacting you. It's influencing you. And then, of course, you have the overlord guides as well, and their overlords.
Catching the tail of their kite, joining them in thought. I'm home. Dr. N. Is your particular cluster group of friends isolated from the other groups of souls, living in other corridors? Subject. No one is really isolated, although some of the younger ones may think so. I've been around a long time, though, and I have a lot of connections. Said with modest confidence. Dr. N. So you felt connections with those other corridors, even with spirits in them you might not know from past experience? Subject. I do because of the connections I have had. There is a oneness here. Dr. N. When you are moving around as a spirit, what is the major difference in your interactions with other souls, compared to being in human form on Earth? Subject. Here no one is a stranger. There is a total lack of hostility toward anyone. Dr. N. You mean every spirit is friendly to every other spirit, regardless of prior associations in many settings? Subject. That's right. And it's more than just being friendly. Dr. N. In what way? Subject. We recognize a universal bond between us which makes us all the same. There is no suspicion toward each other. Dr. N. How does this attitude manifest itself between souls who first meet? Subject. By complete openness and acceptance. Dr. N. Living on Earth must be difficult for souls, then. Subject. It is. For the newer ones especially, because they go to Earth expecting to be treated fairly. When they aren't, it's a shock. For some, it takes quite a few lives to get used to the Earth body. Dr. N. And if the newer souls are struggling with these Earth conditions, are they less efficient when working within the human mind? Subject. I would have to say yes, because the brain drives a lot of fear and violence into our souls. It's hard for us, but that's why we come to Earth, to overcome.
Yeah, we come to Earth to overcome. Yeah, that sounds perfectly rational, right? We come here to be abused, tortured, mind fucked, and all the crap that comes with it. Yeah, it's a learning experience. And you learn from your past lives. Oh, oops, sorry, you don't remember your past lives. So how can you learn from your mistakes?
Dr. N. In your opinion, might the newer souls tend to be more fragile and in need of group support upon returning to their cluster? Subject. That's absolutely true. We all want to return home. Will you let me stop talking now so I can meet with my friends? I have touched upon the commonality of word usage by different clients to describe spiritual phenomena. Case 14 offered us a few more. I regularly hear such water words as currents and streams used to explain a flowing directional movement, where a sky word like cloud denotes a freedom of motion associated with drifting. Visual images, which call up expressions of energy mass and group clusters to indicate souls themselves, are especially popular. I have adopted some of this spiritual language myself. At the final demarcation zone for the incoming soul, waiting cluster groups of familiar entities may be large or small, depending upon the soul's developmental level and other factors, which I will take up as we get a little further along. By way of comparison with case 14, the next case demonstrates a more insular perception of the spirit world from a soul with less maturity. In case 15, the transition of this soul from the staging area to her home cluster is fairly rapid in her mind. The case is informative because it presents attributes of propriety felt by this soul to a designated space, as well as deference toward those who manage the system. Because this subject is less experienced and a bit edgy over what she sees as a need for conformity, we are given another interpretation of spiritual guidelines for group placement. Case 15.
Okay, if you are watching the replay right now, you're going to want to skip ahead about 5 minutes. And people in the live stream right now, I have to take a 5-minute break. I have to refill my water, use the restroom real quick. But I am going to continue on with at least a couple more cases. So if you want to stick around, feel free. I'm going to throw up a 5-minute countdown clock. And, if you got to go do something, take a stretch break or something, feel free. And I'll meet back with you here shortly. Thanks a lot. Okay. Alright, we are back. Thank you for your patience. So let's pick up with the next case here. Alright.
Presents attributes of propriety felt by this soul to a designated space, as well as deference toward those who manage the system. Because this subject is less experienced and a bit edgy over what she sees as a need for conformity, we are given another interpretation of spiritual guidelines for group placement. Case 15. Dr. N. I want to talk to you about your trip into the place where you normally stay in the spirit world. Your soul is now moving toward this destination. Explain what you see and feel. Subject, nervously. I'm going outward somehow. Dr. N. Outward? Subject, puzzled. I am floating along in a chain of some kind. It's as though I'm weaving through a series of connecting links, a foggy maze. Then it opens up. Oh! Dr. N. What is it? Subject, with awe. I have come into a grand arena. I see many others crisscrossing around me. Subject grows uncomfortable. Dr. N. Just relax. You are in the staging area now. Do you still see your guide? Subject, with hesitation. Yes, nearby. Otherwise I would be lost. It's so vast. Dr. N. I place my hand on the subject's forehead. Continue to relax and remember you have been here before.
Just to keep in mind, this area is very similar to some near-death experience testimonies. At least the area, you know, it's so vast, it's large. You have the entity waiting there as the guide, blah, blah, blah.
Although everything may seem new to you, what do you do now? Subject. I'm carried forward, rapidly, straight past others. Then I'm in an empty space. Open. Dr. N. Does this void mean everything is black around you? Subject. It's never black here. The light just contracts to darker shades because of my speed. When I slow down, things get brighter. Others confirm this observation. Dr. N. Continue on and report back to me what you see next. Subject. After a while I see nests of people.
Nests.
Dr. N. You mean groups of people? Subject. Yes. Like hives. I see them as bunches of moving lights. Fireflies. Dr. N. All right. Keep moving and tell me what you feel. Subject. Warmth. Friendship. Empathy. It's dreamy. Dr. N. What is it? Subject. I have slowed way down. Things are different. Dr. N. How? Subject. More clearly defined. Pause. I know this place. Dr. N. Have you reached your own hive, cluster group? Subject. Long pause. Not yet, I guess. Dr. N. Just look about you and report back to me exactly what you see and feel. Subject. Subject begins to tremble. There are bunches of people together, off in the distance, but there. Dr. N. What do you see? Subject. Fearfully. People I know. Some of my family, off in the distance, but, with anguish, I don't seem to be able to reach them. Dr. N. Why? Subject, in tearful bewilderment. I don't know. God, don't they know I'm here? Subject begins to struggle in her chair, and then extends her arm and open hand at my office wall. I can't reach my father. Note. I briefly stop my questioning. This client's father had a great influence in her most immediate past life, and she needs additional calming techniques. I also decide to reinforce her protective shield before continuing. Dr. N, what do you think is the reason your father is off in the distance, so you can't reach him? Subject. During a long pause, I use the time to dry subject's face, which has become wet with tears and perspiration. I don't know. Dr. N, I place my hand on subject's forehead and command, connect with your father, now. Subject. After a pause, the subject relaxes. It's okay. He is telling me to be patient and everything will become clear to me. I want to go over there and be near him. Dr. N, and what does he tell you about that? Subject, sadly. He says that he can always be in my mind if I need him, and I will learn to do this better, think telepathically. But he has to...
And that's what the same thing that's said with people who lose loved ones shortly after and they come and visit them. Same exact thing, you know. You'll hear a lot of times in their accounts that, you know, all you have to do is call on me. And you may not see me or this or that, but I'll be listening, or that, you know, that type of narrative. And sometimes they do show up in the form of holographic type vision.
Stay where he is. Dr. N, what do you think is the basic reason for your father remaining in this other place? Subject, tearfully. He does not belong in my hive. Dr. N, anything else? Subject, the directors, they don't... Crying again. I'm not sure. Note, normally I try to avoid too much intervention when subjects are describing their spiritual transitions. In this case, my client is confused and disoriented, so I offer a little guidance of my own. Dr. N, let's analyze why you can't reach your father's position right now. Could this separation be the result of higher entities believing this is a time for individual reflection on your part, and that you should associate only with other souls at your own level of development? Subject. Subject is more restored. Yes, those messages are coming through.
I don't really like that question. I think it's too leading. He's pretty good with not putting on leading questions most of the time, but that one, I don't like that question. But it is what it is. Let's see.
I have to work things out for myself, with others like me. The directors encourage us.
The directors.
And my father is helping me understand, too. Dr. N, are you satisfied with this procedure? Subject, pause. Yes. Dr. N, all right. Please continue with your passage from the moment you see some of your family in the distance. What happens next? Subject, well, I'm still slowing down, moving gradually. I'm being taken along a course I have been on before. I'm passing some other bunches of people, group clusters, and I stop. Note, the final transit inward is especially important for the younger souls. One client, upon awakening, described this scene as giving him the sense he was arriving back home at twilight after a long trip. Having passed from the countryside into his town, he finally reached the proper street. The front windows of his neighbors' houses were lit, and he could see people inside as he drove slowly past, before reaching the driveway of his own home. Although people in trance may use such words as clumps and hives to describe how their home spaces look from a distance, this view becomes more individualistic once they go into each cluster. Then the subject's spiritual surroundings are associated with towns, schools, and other living areas identified with earthly landmarks of security and pleasure. Dr. N, now that you are stationary, what are your impressions? Subject, it's large activity. There are a lot of people in the vicinity. Some are familiar to me. Others are not. Dr. N, can we get a little closer to all of them? Subject, Abruptly, my subject raises her voice with indignation. You don't understand. I don't go over there. Points a finger toward my office wall. Dr. N. What's the problem?
Not allowed.
Subject. I'm not supposed to. You can't just go off anywhere. Dr.
Oh, isn't that interesting? Can't just go off anywhere. I thought we were all knowing. We had free reign to go anywhere we want in the astral and all that stuff when we die. Isn't that interesting? Boy, it almost seems like we're in a Matrix soul trap or something. I don't know.
N. But you have reached your destination? Subject. It doesn't matter. I don't go over there. Again points a finger at her mental picture. Dr. N. Does this tie in with the messages you received about your father? Subject. Yes, it does. Dr. N. Are you saying to me your soul energy cannot arbitrarily float anywhere, such as outside your group? Subject, pointing outward. They are not in my group over there. Dr. N. Define what you mean by over there. Subject, in a grave tone of voice. Those others nearby. That is their place. Points down to the floor. This is our place. We are here. Nods head to confirm her statement. Dr. N. Who are they? Subject. Well, the others, of course. People not in my group. In a burst of nervous laughter. Oh, look! My own people! It's wonderful to see them again. They are coming toward me.
That voice.
Dr. N. I act as though I am hearing this information for the first time, to encourage spontaneous answers. Really? This does sound wonderful. Are these the same people who were involved with your past life? Subject. More than one life, I can tell you.
Of course.
With pride. These are my people.
Yeah, that's, the attachments, the continuing reincarnation, reincarnating with this core group of people and having ties to them lifetime after lifetime. Maybe not every lifetime, but many lifetimes, sometimes repeated. And they, you'll be loving them one lifetime, you'll be hating them one lifetime. I think there's even certain ones that certain ones are designated to be the protagonist or evil in your incarnation, and then you have the opposite too, where they have the loving and all that stuff, switching up the roles, etc. And that baggage is carried over into the afterlife and then back down here, and it goes on and on and on and on. The cycle of trauma.
Dr. N. These people are entities who are members of your own group? Subject. Of course, yes. I have been with them for so long. Oh, it's fun seeing them all again.
Trauma and love.
Subject is overjoyed, and I give her a few moments with this picture. Dr. N. I see quite a change in your understanding in just the short time since we arrived here. Look off in the distance at the others around this space. What is it like where they live? Subject, agitated. I don't want to know. That is their business. Can't you see? I'm not attached to them. I'm too busy with the people I am supposed to be with here. People I know and love. Dr. N. I do see. But a few minutes ago you were quite distressed at not being able to get close to your father. Subject. I know now he has his own gathering place with people. Dr. N. Why didn't you know that when we arrived here? Subject. I'm not sure. I admit it was a shock at first. Now I know the way things are. It's all coming back to me. Dr. N. Why wasn't your guide around to explain all this to you before you saw your father? Subject. Long pause. I don't know. Dr. N. Probably other people you have known and loved besides your father are also in these groups. Are you saying you have no contact with them, now that you are in your proper place in the spirit world? Subject, upset with me. No, I have contact with my mind. Why are you being so difficult? I am supposed to stay here. Dr. N, I prod the subject once more.
I'm supposed to stay here. Why are you making it so difficult? I'm supposed to stay here. Kind of funny how all of a sudden you're getting so defensive. It's almost as if something might be aiding in that response. So let's just hear that briefly one more time and continue.
Are you saying you have no contact with them now that you are in your proper place in the spirit world? Subject, upset with me. No, I have contact with my mind. Why are you being so difficult? I am supposed to stay here. Dr. N, I prod the subject once more to gain additional information. And you don't just drift over to those other groups for visits? Subject, no, you don't do that. You don't go into their groups and interfere with their energy. Dr. N, but mental contact offers no interference with their energy. Subject, at the right time, when they are free to do this with me. Dr. N, so what you are telling me is that everyone here is located in their own group spaces, and you don't go wandering around visiting or making too much mental contact at the wrong times?
Sounds almost like quarantined. Boy, a lot of similarities going on, ain't there? Almost like it's part of the same system.
Subject, calming down. Yes, they are in their own spaces with instruction going on. It's the directors who move around mostly. Dr. N, thank you for clearing all this up for me. You want me to know that you and your group friends are especially careful about infringing upon others' spaces. Subject, that's right. At least that's the way things are around my space. Dr. N, and you don't feel confined by this custom? Subject, oh no, there are great expanses of space and such a sense of freedom here, as long as we pay attention to the rules. Dr. N, and what if you don't? Who decides what is the proper location for each group of souls? Subject, pause. The teachers help us. Otherwise we would be lost. Dr. N, it seemed to me you were lost when we first arrived here. Subject, with uncertainty. I didn't connect. I wasn't mentally in tune. I messed up. I don't think you realize how big it is around here. Dr. N, look around you at all the occupied spaces. Isn't the spirit world crowded with souls? Subject, laughs. Sometimes we do get lost. That's our own fault. This place is big. That's why it never gets crowded. The two cases in this chapter represent different reactions from a beginner and a more advanced soul, recalling the final phase of their return passages back to the spirit world. Every participant has their own interpretation of the panoramic view from the staging area to the terminus in their cluster group. Some of my subjects find the transition from the gateway to group placement to be so rapid that they need time to adjust upon arrival. When recalling their memories between homecoming and placement, my subjects sometimes express concern that an important individual was not present in light form or did not communicate with them telepathically. Often this is a parent or spouse in the life just completed. By the end of the transition stage, the reason usually becomes evident. Frequently it has to do with embodiment. We have seen how the average returning soul is overwhelmed by pleasure. Familiar beings are clustered together in undulating masses of bright light. On occasion, resonating musical sounds with specific chords guide the incoming traveler. One subject remarked, "As I come near my place, there is a monotone of many voices sounding the letter A, like A, for my recognition, and I can see them all vibrating fast as warm, bright energy, and I know these are disembodied ones right now."
So they're calling cards to lure you back in. Just like the rest of the system, it's all about being able to identify things like the light at the end of the tunnel, the life review. Everything is set up so you recognize it, but also follow a specific order that you are supposed to listen to. You're not allowed to be sovereign. It's not allowed. Not allowed.
What this means is that those souls who are currently incarnated in one or more bodies at the moment may not be actively engaged with welcoming anybody back. Another subject explained, "It is as if they are sleeping on autopilot. We always know who is out and who is in." Those souls who are not totally discarnated radiate a dim light with low pulsating energy patterns and don't seem to communicate much with anyone. Even so, these souls are able to greet the returning soul in a quiet fashion within the group setting. The sense of a barrier between various groups, as experienced by Case 15, has different versions among my subjects, depending upon the age of the soul. I will have another perspective about mobility in the next case. The average soul with a great deal of basic work to do describes the separation of their group from others as similar to being in different classrooms in the same schoolhouse. I have also had clients who felt they were entirely separated in their own schoolhouse. The analogy of spiritual schools directed by teacher guides is used so often by people under hypnosis that it has become a habit for me to use the same terminology. As I mentioned earlier, after souls arrive back into their soul groups, they are summoned to appear before a council of elders. While the council is not prosecutorial, they do engage in direct examination of a soul's activities before returning them to their groups. It is not unusual for my subjects to have some difficulty providing me with full details of what transpires at these hearings, and I am sure these blocks are intentional. Here's a report from one case. After I meet with my friends, my guide Veronica, subject's younger teacher, takes me to another place to meet with my panel of elders. She is at my side as an interpreter for what I don't understand, and to provide support for explanations of my conduct in the last life. At times, she speaks on my behalf as a kind of defense advocate, but Quazel, subject's senior guide who arrived before Veronica, carries the most weight with the panel. There are always the same 6 elders in front of me who wear long white robes. Their faces are kindly, and they evaluate my perceptions of the life I have just lived.
Yeah, I mean, you have the robe thing again, the council. So, this is another data point that continually pops up. And yeah, so just take note of that. Sometimes the amount of elders, so to say, will vary, but hear the robes all the time.
And how I could have done better with my talents, and what I did that was beneficial. I am freely allowed to express my frustrations and desires. All the elders are familiar to me, especially 2 of them who address me more than the others, and who look younger than the rest. I think I can distinguish appearances which are male or female. Each has a special aspect in the way they question me, but they are honest and truthful, and I am always treated fairly. I can hide nothing from them, but sometimes I get lost when their thoughts are transmitted back and forth in the rapid communication between them. When it is more than I can handle, Veronica translates what they are saying about me, although I have the feeling she does not tell me everything. Before I return to Earth, they will want to see me a second time. Souls consider themselves having finally arrived home when they rejoin familiar classmates in a group setting. Their attendance here with certain other souls does resemble an educational placement system in form and function. The criteria for group admission is based upon knowledge and a given developmental level. As in any classroom situation, some students connect well with teachers and others less so. The next chapter will examine the sorting out process for soul groups and how souls view themselves in their respective spiritual locations. 7. Placement. My impression of the people who believe we do have a soul is that they imagine all souls are probably mixed into one great congregation of space. Many of my subjects believe this too, before their sessions begin. After awakening, it is no wonder they express surprise with the knowledge that everyone has a designated place in the spirit world. When I began to study life in the spirit world with people under hypnosis, I was unprepared to hear about the existence of organized soul support groups. I had pictured spirits just floating around aimlessly by themselves after leaving Earth. Group placement is determined by soul level. After physical death, a soul's journey back home ends with debarkation into the space reserved for their own colony, as long as they are not a very young soul, or isolated for other reasons as mentioned in Chapter 4. The souls represented in these cluster groups are intimate old friends who have about the same awareness level. When people in trance speak of being part of a soul cluster group, they are talking about a small primary unit of entities who have direct and frequent contact, just as we would see in a human family. Peer members have a sensitivity to each other, which is far beyond our conception on Earth. Secondary groups of souls are arranged in the form of a community support group, which is much less intimate with one another. Larger secondary groups of entities are made up of giant sets of primary clusters, as lily pads in one pond. Spiritual ponds appear to be endless. Within these ponds, I have never heard of a secondary group estimated at less than 1,000 souls. The many primary group clusters which make up one secondary group seem to have sporadic relationships, or no contact at all between clusters. It is rare for me to find souls involved with each other in any meaningful way who are members of two different secondary groups, because the number of souls is so great it is not necessary. The smaller subgroup primary clusters vary in number, containing anywhere from 3 to 25 souls. I am told the average assemblage is around 15, which is called the inner circle. Any working contact between members of different cluster groups is governed by the lessons to be learned during an incarnation. This may be due to a past life connection, or the particular identity trait of the souls involved. Soul acquaintanceships between members of different cluster groups usually involve peripheral roles in life on Earth. An example would be a high school classmate who was once a close friend, but who you now see only at class reunions. Members of the same cluster group are closely united for all eternity. These tightly knit clusters are often composed of like-minded souls.
Not this guy. No all eternity links going on up in here. Those days are over.
With common objectives, which they continually work out with each other. Usually they choose lives together as relatives and close friends during their incarnations on Earth. It is much more common for me to find a subject's brother or sister from former lives in the same cluster group, rather than souls who have been their parents. Parents can meet us at the gateway to the spirit world after a death on Earth, but we may not see much of their souls in the spirit world. This circumstance exists not for reasons of maturity, since a parent's soul could be less developed than their human offspring. Rather, it is more a question of social learning between siblings, who are contemporary in one time frame.
And it also seems to, skip generation, too. That's something I kind of picked up on, but he's going to go into more detail about that.
Although parents are a child's primary identification figures for both good and bad karmic effects, it is frequently our relations with spouses, brothers, sisters, and selected close friends over a whole lifetime that most influences personal growth. This takes nothing away from the importance of parents, aunts, uncles, and grandparents, who serve us in different ways from another generation. The next case offers us an account of what it is like coming back to one's cluster group after physical death. Case 16. Dr. N. Once you leave the staging area and have arrived in the spiritual space where you belong, what do you do then? Subject. I go to school with my friends. Dr. N. You mean you are in some kind of spiritual classroom? Subject. Yes, where we study. Dr. N.
Doesn't that just sound like a nightmare? You got to go back to school when you're up there too. That's what I was talking about earlier. There's these soul classes, soul school. It's insane. They don't leave us alone. We're harassed constantly. And then we got to deal with this bullshit when we get back down here. Oh, it's never ending. Thank God it's over with. Well, it is ending, but just imagine how many lifetimes some of us here have had. The number has got to be enormous. I really wonder what the percentage of spirits that actually make it completely out of here is. Like, maybe on a yearly basis, decade basis. I bet it's not even 1%. It's got to be, they have got this place under such tight control. It's hard to imagine, maybe 5%? I don't know. I know I'm just kind of shooting the shit here, but I have no clue, obviously. But I'm really curious what that number would be and how many lifetimes we have spent here.
I want you to take me through this school from the time of your arrival, so I can appreciate what is happening to you. Start by telling me what you see from the outside. Subject, with no hesitation. I see a perfectly square Greek temple with large sculptured columns. Very beautiful. I recognize it because this is where I return after each cycle. Life. Dr. N. What is a classical Greek temple doing in the spirit world? Subject, shrugs. I don't know why it appears to me that way, except it seems natural, since my lives in Greece. Dr. N. All right, let's continue. Does anyone come to meet you? Subject. Subject smiles broadly. My teacher, Carla.
Good
Dr.
Carla.
N. And how does she appear to you? Subject, confidently. I see her coming out of the entrance of the temple towards me, as a goddess, tall, wearing long flowing robes. One shoulder is bare. Her hair is piled up and fastened with a gold clasp.
Got the robes again.
She reaches out to me. Dr. N. Look down at yourself. Are you dressed in the same garments? Subject. We all seem to be dressed the same. We shimmer with light. And we can change. Carla knows I like the way she looks. Dr. N. Where are the others? Subject. Carla has taken me inside my temple school. I see a large library. Small gatherings of people are speaking in quiet tones. At tables. It is sedate, warm, a secure feeling which is so familiar to me. Dr. N. Do all these people appear as adult men and women? Subject. Yes, but there are more women in my group. Dr. N. Why? Subject. Because that's the valence they are most comfortable with right now. Note. The word valence used by this subject to indicate gender preference is an odd choice, yet it does fit. Valences in chemistry are positive or negative properties, which when combined with other elements give proportion. Souls in groups may be inclined toward male and female personages or mixed. Dr. N. Okay, what do you do next? Subject. Carla leads me to the nearest table and my friends immediately greet me. Oh, it's so good to be back. Dr. N. Why are these particular people here with you in this temple? Subject. Because we are all in the same study group. I can't tell you how happy I am to be with them once more. Subject becomes distracted with this scene, and it takes me a minute to get her started again. Dr. N. Tell me how many people are in this library with you. Subject pauses while mentally counting. About 20. Dr. N. Are all 20 very close friends of yours? Subject. We are all close. I've known them for ages, but 5 are my dearest friends.
For ages.
Dr. N. Are every one of the 20 people at about the same level of learning? Subject. Almost. Some are a little further along than the rest. Dr. N. Where would you place yourself in the group as far as knowledge? Subject. Around the middle. Dr. N. As to learning lessons, where are you in relation to your 5 closest friends? Subject: Oh, we are about the same. We work together a lot. Dr. N: What do you call them? Subject chuckles. We have pet names for each other. Dr. N: Why do you have nicknames? Subject: To define our essence. We see each other as representing earth things.
Oh.
Dr. N: What is...
They see each other as representing earth things. Really? Oh. Well, yeah, that sounds like a blast. There we go. I'm going to rewind that quick part.
Dr. N: Why do you have nicknames? Subject: To define our essence. We see each other as representing earth things. Dr. N: What is your pet name? Subject: Thistle. Dr. N: And this represents some personal attribute? Subject: Pause. I am known for sharp reactions to new situations in my rotations, life cycles. Dr. N: What is the entity you feel closest to called, and why? Subject: Soft laughter. Spray. He goes flat out in his rotations, dispensing his energy so rapidly it splashes in all directions, just like the water he loves so much on Earth. Dr. N: Your family group sounds very distinctive. Now, would you explain to me what you and your friends actually do in this library setting? Subject: I go to my table and we all look at the books. Dr. N: Books? What sort of books? Subject: The life books. Dr. N: Describe them as best you can for me. Subject: They are picture books. Thick white edges, 2 or 3 inches thick, quite large. Dr. N: Open one of the life books for me and explain what you and your friends at the table see. Subject: Pause, while the subject's hands come together and move apart, as though she were opening a book. There is no writing. Everything we see is in live pictures. Dr. N: Action pictures, different than photographs? Subject: Yes, they are multidimensional. They move, shift, from a center of crystal which changes with reflected light. Dr. N: So the pictures are not flat. The moving light waves have depth? Subject: That's right. They are alive. Dr. N: Tell me how you and your friends use the books. Subject: Well, at first, it's always out of focus when the book is opened. Then we think of what we want. The crystal turns from dark to light and gets into alignment. Then we can see, in miniature, our past lives and the alternatives. Dr. N: How is time treated in these books? Subject: By frames, pages. Time is condensed by the life books. Dr. N: I don't want to dwell on your past right now, but take a look at the book and just tell me the first thing you see. Subject: A lack of self-discipline in my last life, because this is what is on my mind.
Alright, so, there we go. Already, the inner guilt trip, the book's representing a guilt trip. Shame, shame, shame. Shame on you. Just guilt, guilt, guilt.
See myself dying young, in a lover's quarrel. My ending was useless. Dr. N: Do you see future lives in the life book? Subject: We can look at future possibilities, in small bites only, in the form of lessons. Mostly these options come later with the help of others. These books are intended to emphasize our past acts. Dr. N: Would you give me your impression of the intent behind this library atmosphere with your cluster group? Subject: Oh, we all help one another go over mistakes during this cycle. Our teacher is in and out, and so we do a lot of studying together and discuss the value of our choices. Dr. N. Are there other groups where people study in this building? Subject. No, this is for our group. There are different buildings where various groups study near us. Dr. N. Are the groups of people who study in these buildings more or less advanced than those in your group? Subject. Both. Dr. N. Are you allowed to visit these other buildings where souls study? Subject. Long pause. There is one which we go to regularly. Dr. N. Which one? Subject. A place for the newer ones. We help them when their teacher is gone. It's nice to be needed. Dr. N. Help them how? Subject. Laughs. With their homework. Dr. N. But don't the teacher guides have that responsibility? Subject. Well, you see, the teachers are so much further along in development. This group appreciates our assistance because we can relate to them easily.
Yeah, because the teacher's better than you. The teacher's better than you, and you got to be knocked down a peg. You're not at their level. Come on.
Dr. N. Ah, so you do a little student teaching with this group. Subject. Yes, but we don't do it anywhere else. Dr. N. Why not? Why couldn't more advanced groups come to your library to assist you once in a while? Subject. They don't because we are further along than the newer ones, and we don't infringe on them either. If I want to connect with someone, I do it outside the study center. Dr. N. Can you wander about anywhere as long as you don't bother other souls in their study areas? Subject. Responds with some evasiveness. I like to stay around the vicinity of my temple, but I can reach out to anyone. Dr. N. I get the impression...
Okay, let me just, I'm going to rewind that one part, just to hear it again, very quickly, just 10 seconds.
Responds with some evasiveness. I like to stay around the vicinity of my temple.
Responds with evasiveness, because, remember, no wandering. There is no wandering. You're not allowed. You have to stick around your group and your little area and be a good little slave. And when we're ready to call you and it's time to reincarnate, you better get your ass down there. Got it? No wandering in the astral realm. Not allowed.
Temple. But I can reach out to anyone. Dr. N. I get the impression that your soul energy is restricted to this spiritual space, even though you can mentally reach out further. Subject. I don't feel restricted. We have plenty of room to go about, but I'm not attracted to everyone. The statement about non-restriction, cited by Case 16, seems contrary to those boundaries of spiritual space seen by the last case. When I initially bring subjects into the spirit world, their visions are spontaneous, particularly as to spiritual order and their place in a community of soul life. While the average subject may talk about having private spaces, as far as living and working, none sees the spirit world as confining. Once their superconscious recall gets rolling, most people are able to tell me about having freedom of movement and going to open spaces where souls of many learning levels gather in a recreational atmosphere. In these communal areas, floating souls socially engage in many activities. Some are quite playful, as when I hear of older souls teasing the younger ones about what lies ahead for them. One subject put it this way: we play tricks on each other like a bunch of kids. During hide and seek, some of the younger ones get lost, and then we can help them find themselves. I am also told guests can appear in soul groups at times to entertain and tell stories, similar to the troubadours of the Middle Ages. Another subject mentioned that her group loved to see an odd-looking character known as Humor show up and make them all laugh with his antics. Frequently, people in hypnosis find it hard to clearly explain the strange meanings behind their intermingling as souls. One diversion I hear rather often is of souls forming a circle to more fully unify and project their thought energy. Always a connection with a higher power is reported here. Some people have told me, thought rhythms are so harmonized, they bring forth a form of singing. Gracefully subtle dancing can also take place when souls whirl around each other in a mixture of energy, blending and separating in exotic patterns of light and color. Physical things such as shrines, boats, animals, trees, or ocean beaches can be conjured up at the center of these dances as well. These images have special meaning to soul groups as planetary symbols, which reinforce positive memories from former lives together. This sort of material replication apparently does not represent sadness by spirits who long to be in a physical state again, but rather a joyful communion with historical events that helped shape their individual identities. For me, these mythic expressions by souls are ceremonial in nature, and yet they go far beyond basic ritual. Although certain places in the spirit world are described as having the same function by subjects in superconscious, their images in each of these regions can vary. Thus, a study area described as a Greek temple in this case is represented as a modern school building by another person. Other statements may seem more contradictory. For instance, many subjects mentally traveling from one location to another in the spirit world will tell me the space around them is like a sphere, as we saw in the last chapter. But then they will add that the spirit world is not enclosed because it is limitless. I think what we have to keep in mind is that people tend to structure their frame of reference during a trance state with what their conscious mind sees and has experienced on Earth. Quite a few people who come out of trance tell me there is so much about the spirit world they were unable to describe in earthly terms. Each person translates abstract spiritual conditions of their experience into symbols of interpretation which make sense to them. Sometimes a subject will even express disbelief at their own visions when I first take them into a spiritual place. This is because the critical area of their conscious mind has not stopped dropping message units. People in trance soon adapt to what their unconscious mind is recording. When I began to gather information about souls in groups, I based my assessments of where these souls belonged on the level of their knowledge. Using only this criterion of identification, it was difficult for me to swiftly place a client. Case 16 came to me early in my studies of life in the spirit world. It was a significant one because during the session, I was to learn about the recognition of souls by color. Before this case, I listened to my subjects describing the colors they were seeing in the spirit world without appreciating the importance of this information in relation to souls themselves. My clients reported about shades of soul energy mass, but I didn't piece these observations together. I was not asking the right questions. I was familiar with Kirlian photography and the studies in parapsychology at UCLA, where research has indicated each living person projects their own colored aura. In human form, apparently we have an ionized energy field flowing out and around our physical bodies, connected by a network of vital power points called chakras. Since spiritual energy has been described to me as a moving, living force, the amount of electromagnetic energy required to hold a soul on our physical plane could be another factor in producing different earthly colors. It has also been said that a human aura reflects thoughts and emotions combined with the physical health of an individual. I wondered if these personal meridians projected by humans had a direct connection to what I was being told about the light emitted by souls in the spirit world. With case 16, I realized that radiated soul light visualized by spirits is not all white. In the minds of my subjects, every soul generates a specific color aura. I credit this case with helping me decipher the meaning of these manifestations of energy. Dr. N. All right. Let's float outside your temple of study. What do you see around you or off in the distance? Subject. People. Large gatherings of people. Dr. N. How many would you say? Subject. In the distance. I can't count. Hundreds and hundreds. There are so many. Dr. N. And do you identify with all these souls? Are you associated with them? Subject. Not really. I can't even see all of them. It's sort of fuzzy out there. But my gang is near me. Dr. N. If I could call your gang of about 20 souls your primary cluster group, are you associated with the larger secondary body of souls around you now? Subject. We are all associated, but not directly. I don't know those others. Dr. N. Do you see the physical features of all these other souls in the same way as you did your own group in the temple? Subject. No, that isn't necessary. It's more natural out here in the open. I see them all as spirits. Dr. N. Look out at the distance from where you are now. How do you see all these spirits? What are they like? Subject. Different lights, buzzing around as fireflies. Dr. N. Can you tell if the souls who work with each other, such as teachers and students, stick together all the time? Subject. People in my gang do, but the teachers kind of stick to themselves when they are not assisting in our lessons. Dr. N. Do you see any teacher guides from where we are now? Subject. Pause. Some, yes. There are much fewer of them than us, of course. I can see Carla with two of her friends. Dr. N. And you know they are guides, even without seeing any physical features? You can look out there at all the bright white lights and just mentally tell they are guides? Subject. Sure, we can do that. But they are not all white. Dr. N. You mean souls are not all absolutely white? Subject. That's partially true. The intensity aspect of our energy can make us less brilliant. Dr. N. So Carla and her two friends display different shades of white? Subject. No, they aren't white at all. Dr. N. I don't follow you. Subject. She and her two friends are teachers. Dr. N. What is the difference? Are you saying these guides radiate energy which is not white? Subject. That's right. Dr. N. Well, what color are they? Subject. Yellow, of course. Dr. N. Oh, so all guides radiate yellow energy? Subject. No, they don't. Dr. N. What? Subject. Carla's teacher is Valere. He is blue. We see him sometimes here. Nice guy, very smart. Dr. N. Blue? How did we get to blue? Subject. Valere shows a light blue.
Valere.
Dr. N. I'm confused. You didn't say anything about another teacher called Valere being part of your group. Subject. You didn't ask me. Anyway, he is not in my group. Neither is Carla. They have their own groups. Dr. N. And these guides have auras which are yellow and blue? Subject. Yes. Dr. N. How many other energy colors do you see floating around here? Subject. None. Dr. N. Why not red and green energy lights? Subject. Some are reddish, but no green lights. Dr. N. Why not? Subject. I don't know, but sometimes when I look around, this place is lit up like a Christmas tree. Dr. N. I'm curious about Valere. Does every spiritual group have two teachers assigned to their cluster? Subject. It varies. Carla trains under Valere, so we have two. We see little of him. He works with other groups besides us. Dr. N. So, Carla herself is student teaching as a less advanced guide? Subject, somewhat indignantly. She is advanced enough for me. Dr. N. Okay, but will you help me straighten out these color schemes? Why is Carla's energy radiating yellow and Valere blue? Subject. It's easy. Valere precedes all of us in knowledge, and he gives off a darker intensity of light.
Yeah, so Valere, he's a better color. He gives off some radiance about him, that he's better than you.
Dr. N, does the shade of blue, compared to yellow or plain white, make a difference between souls? Subject. I'm trying to tell you. Blue is deeper than yellow, and yellow is more intense than white, depending on how far along you are. Dr. N. Oh, then the luminosity of Valere radiates less brightly than Carla, and she is less brilliant than your energy because you are further down in development? Subject laughs. Much further down. They both have a heavier, more steady life than me. Dr. N. And how does Carla's yellow color vary from your whiteness in terms of where you are going with your own advancement? Subject, with pride. I'm turning into a reddish white. Eventually I'll have light gold. Recently I've noticed Carla turning a little darker yellow. I expected it. She is so knowledgeable and good. Dr. N. Really? And then will she eventually take her energy level to dark blue in intensity? Subject. No, to a light blue at first. It's always gradual, as our energy becomes more dense. Dr. N. So these three basic lights of white, yellow, and blue represent the development stages of souls and are visibly obvious to all spirits?
So just like we were saying, you got this coded thing where one is better than the other. You're basically in a ranking system based on your color that you were given and or perceived or emit, again based on where they think you should be. It's probably self-induced mostly. It's a guess, but nonetheless, all part of the system, all part of this perpetual just nastiness of being stuck here and inside of its zones. Really, hashtag last timers. We're done with this place. It's over. No attachments. Can't take any attachments with you. That's how you get out. And there's more detail on that, but that's to come down the road. But you get the idea based on some of you who've been around. You've seen kind of where I'm going at with most of this, based on some of my previous videos. So let's continue. By the way, this is the last case. Been going for way too long.
Subject. That's right. And the changes are very slow. Dr. N. Look around again. Do you see all the energy colors equally represented by souls in this area? Subject. Oh no, mostly white, some yellows, and few blues. Dr. N. Thank you for clarifying this for me. I routinely question everyone about their color hues while they are in trance. Aside from the general whiteness of the spirit world itself, my subjects report seeing a majority of other souls displaying shades of white. Apparently, a neutral white or gray is the starting point of development. Spirit auras then mix the primary colors of red, yellow, and blue from a base of white. A few people see greenish hues mixed with yellow or blue. To equate what I have heard about soul energy with the physical laws which govern the color spectrum we see in the heavens is just supposition. However, I have found some similarities. The energy of radiated light from cooler stars in the sky is a red-orange, while the hotter stars increase from yellow to blue-white. Temperature acts on light waves that are also visible vibrations of the spectrum with different frequencies. The human eye registers these waves as a band of light to dark colors. The energy colors of souls probably have little to do with such elements as hydrogen and helium, but perhaps there is an association with a high energy field of electromagnetism. I suspect all soul light is influenced by vibrational motion, in tune with a harmonious spiritual oneness of wisdom. Some aspects of quantum physics suggest the universe is made up of vibrational waves which influence masses of physical objects by an interaction of different frequencies. Light, motion, sound, and time are all interrelated in physical space. I was hearing these same relationships applied to spiritual matter from my cases. Eventually, I concluded both our spiritual and physical consciousness project and receive light energy. I believe individual vibrational wave patterns represent each soul's aura. As souls, the density, color, and form of light we radiate is proportional to the power of our knowledge and perception, as represented by increasing concentrations of light matter as we develop. Individual patterns of energy not only display who we are, but indicate the degree of ability to heal others and regenerate ourselves. People in hypnosis speak of colors to describe how souls appear, especially from a distance when they are shapeless. From my cases, I have learned the more advanced souls project masses of faster-moving energy particles, which are reported to be blue in color, with the highest concentrations being purple. In the visible spectrum on Earth, blue-violet has the shortest wavelength, with energy peaking in the invisible ultraviolet. If color density is a reflection of wisdom, then the lower wavelengths of white through yellow emanating from souls must represent lower concentrations of vibrational energy. The classification of souls by color coding, as reported by my subjects, can be represented by a chart I have designed. The left column lists the soul's spiritual state, or grade level of learning. The right column shows our guide status and denotes our ability and readiness to serve in that capacity for others, which will be explained further in the next chapter. Learning begins with our creation as a soul, and then accelerates with the first physical life assignment. With each incarnation we grow in understanding, although we may slip back in certain lives before regaining our footing and advancing again. Nevertheless, from what I can determine, once a spiritual level is attained by the soul, it stays there. This chart includes 6 levels of incarnating souls. Although I generally place my subjects into the broad categories of beginner, intermediate, and advanced souls, there are subtle differences in between, at levels 2 and 4. For example, to determine whether a soul is starting to move out of the beginner stage at level 1 into level 2, I must not only know how much white energy remains, but analyze the subject's responses to questions which demonstrate learning. A genealogy of past life successes, future expectations, group associations, and conversations between my subjects and their guides all form a profile of growth. The contents of the chart are as follows. Learning stage, level 1, beginner. Kinetic color range, white, bright and homogeneous. Guide status, none. Learning stage, level 2, lower intermediate. Kinetic color range, off-white, reddish shades ultimately turning into traces of yellow. Guide status, none. Learning stage, level 3, intermediate. Kinetic color range, yellow, solid with no traces of white. Guide status, none. Learning stage, level 4, upper intermediate. Kinetic color range, dark yellow, a deep gold ultimately turning into traces of blue. Guide status, junior. Learning stage, level 5, advanced. Kinetic color range, light blue, with no traces of yellow, ultimately turning into traces of purple. Guide status, senior. Learning stage, level 6, highly advanced. Kinetic color range, dark bluish purple, surrounded by radiant light. Guide status, master. Some of my subjects object to my characterizing the spirit world as a place governed by societal structure and organizational management. On the other hand, I continually listen to these same subjects describe a planned and ordered process of self-development influenced by peers and teachers. If the spirit world does resemble one great schoolhouse, with a multitude of classrooms under the direction of teacher souls who monitor our progress, then it has structure. My chart represents a basic working placement model for my own use. I know it has imperfections. I hope follow-up research by regression therapists in future years may build upon my conceptualizations, with their own replications to measure soul maturity. This chapter may give the reader the impression that souls are as segregated by light level in the spirit world as people are by class and communities on Earth. Societal conditions on Earth cannot be compared with the spirit world. The differences in light frequency measuring knowledge in souls all comes from the same energy source. Souls are fully integrated by thought. If all levels of performance in the spirit world were on one grade level, souls would have a poor system of training. The old one-room schoolhouse concept of education on Earth limited students of different ages. In spiritual peer groups, souls work at their own developmental level with others like them. Mature teacher guides prepare succeeding generations of souls to take their places. And so there are practical reasons why conditions exist in the spirit world for a system designed to measure learning and development. The system fosters enlightenment and ultimately the perfection of souls. It is important to understand that while we may suffer the consequences of bad choices in our educational tasks, we are always protected, supported, and directed within the system by master souls. I see this as the spiritual management of souls. The whole idea of a hierarchy of souls has been part of both Eastern and Western cultures for many centuries. Plato spoke of the transformation of souls from childhood to adulthood, passing through many stages of moral reason. The Greeks felt humankind moves from amoral, immature, and violent beings over many lives to people who are finally socialized with pity, patience, forgiveness, honesty, and love. In the 2nd century A.D., the new Christian theology was greatly influenced by Plotinus, whose Neoplatonist cosmology involved souls having a hierarchy of degrees of being. The highest being was a transcendent one, or God-creator, out of which the soul self was born, which would occupy humans. Eventually, these lower souls would return to complete reunion with the universal Oversoul. My classification of soul development is intended to be neither socially nor intellectually elitist. Souls in a high state of advancement are often found in humble circumstances on Earth. By the same token, people in the upper strata of influence in human society are by no means in a blissful state of soul maturity. Often just the reverse is true. In terms of placement by soul development, I cannot overemphasize the importance of our spiritual groups. Chapter 9 on beginner souls, levels 1 and 2, will more closely examine how a soul group functions. Before going further, however, I want to summarize what I have learned about the basic principles of soul group assignments. Regardless of the relative time of creation after their novice status is completed, all beginner souls are assigned to a new group of souls at their level of understanding. Once a new soul support group is formed, no new members are added in the future. There appears to be a systematic selection procedure for homogeneous groupings of souls. Similarities of ego, cognitive awareness, expression, and desire are all considerations. Irrespective of size, cluster groups do not directly intermix with each other's energy, but souls can communicate with one another across primary and secondary group boundaries. Primary clusters in levels 1 and 2 may split into smaller subgroups for study, but are not separated from the integrated whole within a single cluster of souls. Rates of learning vary among peer group members. Certain souls will advance faster than others in a cluster group, although these students may not be equally competent and effective in all areas of their curricula. Around the intermediate level of learning, souls demonstrating special talents, healing, teaching, creating, etc., are permitted to participate in specialty groups for more advanced work, while still remaining with their cluster group. At the point where a soul's needs, motives, and performance abilities are judged to be fully at level 3 in all areas of self-development. They are then loosely formed into an independent studies workgroup. Usually, their old guides continue to monitor them through one master teacher. Thus, a new pod of entities graduating into full level 3 could be brought together from many clusters within one or more secondary groups. When they approach level 4, souls are given more independence outside group activities. Although group size diminishes as souls advance, the intimate contact between original peer group members is never lost. Spirit guides have a wide variety of teaching methods and instructional personifications, depending upon group composition. 8. Our guides. I have never worked with a subject in trance who did not have a personal guide. Some guides are more in evidence than others during hypnosis sessions. It is my custom to ask subjects if they see or feel a discarnate presence in the room. If they do, this third party is usually a protective guide. Often, a client will sense the presence of a discarnate figure before visualizing a face or hearing a voice. People who meditate a great deal are naturally more familiar with these visions than someone who has never called upon his or her guide. The recognition of these spiritual teachers brings people into the company of a warm, loving, creative power. Through our guides, we become more acutely aware of the continuity of life and our identity as a soul. Guides are figures of grace in our existence because they are part of the fulfillment of our destiny. Guides are complex entities, especially when they are master guides. The awareness level of the soul determines to some extent the degree of advancement of the guide assigned to them. In fact, the maturity of a particular guide also has a bearing on whether these teachers have only one student or many under their direction. Guides at the senior level of ability and above usually work with an entire group of souls in the spirit world and on Earth. These guides have other entities who assist them. From what I can see, every soul group usually has one or more rather new teachers in training. As a result, some people may have more than one guide helping them. The personal names my clients attach to their guides range from ordinary, whimsical, or quaint-sounding words to the bizarre. Frequently, these names can be traced back to a specific past life a teacher spent with a student. Some clients are unable to verbalize their guide's name because the sound cannot be duplicated, even when they see them clearly while under hypnosis. I tell these people it is much more important that they understand the purpose of why certain guides are assigned to them, rather than possessing their names. A subject may simply use a general designation for their guide, such as director, advisor, instructor, or just my friend. One has to be careful how the word friend is interpreted. Usually, when a person in trance talks about a spiritual friend, they are referring to a soulmate or peer group associate rather than a guide. Entities who are our friends exist on levels not much higher or lower than ourselves. These friends are able to offer mental encouragement from the spirit world while we are on Earth, and they can be with us as incarnated human companions while we walk the roads of life. One of the most important aspects of my therapeutic work with clients is assisting them on a conscious level with appreciating the role their guides play in life. These teacher entities edify all of us with their skillful instruction techniques. Ideas we claim as our own may be generated by a concerned guide. Guides also comfort us during the trying periods in our lives, especially when we are children in need of solace. I remember a charming remark made by a subject after I asked when she began seeing her guide in this life. "Oh, when I was daydreaming," she said. "I remember my guide was with me on my first day of school when I was really scared. She sat on top of my desk to keep me company, and then showed me the way to the bathroom when I was too afraid to ask the teacher." The concept of personalized spiritual beings goes far back in antiquity to our earliest origins as thinking human beings. Anthropological studies at the sites of prehistoric people suggest their totemic symbols evoked individual protection. Later, some 5,000 years ago as city-states arose, Official deities became identified with state religions. These gods were more remote and even generated fear. Thus, personal and family deities assumed great importance in the day-to-day life of people for protection. A personal soul deity served as a guardian angel to each person or family, and could be called upon for divine help during a crisis. This tradition has been carried down into our cultures of today. We have two examples at opposite ends of the United States. Aumakua is a personal god to Hawaiians. The Polynesians believe one's ancestors can assume a personal god relationship, as humans, animals, or fish, to living family members. In visions and dreams, Aumakua can either assist or reprimand an individual. In northeastern America, the Iroquois believe a human's own inner spiritual power is called Orenda, which is connected to a higher personal Orenda spirit. This guardian is able to resist the powers of harm and evil directed at an individual.
So again, we have, the crossing over again, where these spirit guides, or so-called, these phony guides, are there and part of your existence in some form. I noticed Bear said, spirit guides really haven't been, or guides haven't really been involved in this lifetime. Well, who knows? Maybe it was a more hands-off approach agreement that you had, or however your life is playing out via the script you chose. They're content with the way it's going. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows what the reasoning is behind all of that, but the connection for a guide definitely is solid, and we've seen that cross-culture for a very long time, so just thought I'd throw that out there. As soon as it gets to the next number, I'm gonna stop it there because I'm getting pretty tired. I thought this part was gonna end by now, so we'll just keep going until I get to the next part, and then we're gonna call it a day.
The concept of soul watchers, who function as guides, is part of the belief system of many Native American cultures. The Zuni tribes of the Southwest have oral traditions in their mythology of godlike beings with personal existences. They are called the makers and holders of life paths, and are considered the caretakers of souls. There are other cultures around the world which also believe someone other than God is watching over them, to personally intercede on their behalf. I think human beings have always needed anthropomorphic figures below a supreme God to portray the spiritual forces around them. When people pray or meditate, they want to reach out to an entity with whom they are acquainted for inspiration. It is easier to ask for aid from a figure which can be clearly identified in the human mind. There is a lack of imagery with a supreme God, which hinders a direct connection for many people. Regardless of our diverse religious preferences and degrees of faith, people also feel if there is a supreme God, this divinity is too busy to bother about their individual problems. People often express an unworthiness for a direct association with God. As a result, the world's major religions have used prophets who once lived on earth to serve as our intermediaries with God. Possibly because some of these prophets have been elevated to divine status themselves, they are not personal enough anymore. I say this without diminishing the vital spiritual influence all the great prophets have had on their followers. Millions of people derive benefit from the teachings of these powerful souls who incarnated on earth as prophets in our historical past. And yet, people know in their hearts, as they have always known, that someone, some personal entity individual to them is there, waiting to be reached. I have the theory that guides appear to people who are very religious as figures of their faith. There was a case on a national television show where the child of a devout Christian family suffered a near-death experience and said she saw Jesus. When asked to draw with crayons what she saw, the little girl drew a featureless blue man standing within a halo of light. My subjects have shown me how much they depend upon and make use of their spiritual guides during life. I have come to believe we are their direct responsibility. not gods. These learned teachers remain with us over thousands of Earth years to assist in our trials, before, during, and after countless lives. I notice that, unlike people walking around in a conscious state, subjects in trance do not blame God for their misfortunes in life. More often than not, when we are in the soul state, it is our personal guide who takes the brunt of any dissatisfaction. I am often asked if teacher guides are matched to us or just picked at random. This is a difficult question to answer. Guides do appear to be assigned to us in the spirit world in an orderly fashion. I have come to believe their individual teaching styles and management techniques support and beautifully integrate with our permanent soul identity. For instance, I have heard about younger guides whose past lives included overcoming particularly difficult negative traits, being assigned to souls with the same behavior patterns. It seems these empathetic guides are graded on how well they do in their assignments to effect positive change. All guides have compassion for their students, but teaching approaches vary. I find some guides constantly helping their students on Earth, while others demand their charges work out lessons with little overt encouragement. The maturity of the soul is, of course, a factor. Certainly graduate students get less help than freshmen. Aside from the developmental level, I look at the intensity of individual desire as another consideration in the frequency of appearance and form of assistance one receives from his or her guide during a life. As to gender assignments, I find no consistent correlation of male and female subjects to masculine or feminine appearing guides. On the whole, people accept the gender portrayed by their guide as quite natural. It could be argued that this is because they have become used to them over eons of relative time, as males or females, rather than the assumption that one sex is more effective than another between specific students and teachers. Some guides appear as mixed genders, which lends support to souls being truly androgynous. One client told me, "My guide is sometimes Alexis or Alex, dropping in and out of both sexes, depending on my need for male or female advice." From what I can determine, the procedure for teacher selection is carefully managed in the spirit world. Every human being has at least one senior or a higher master guide assigned to their soul since the soul was first created. Many of us inherit a newer secondary guide later in our existence, such as Carla in the previous chapter. For want of a better term, I have called these student teachers junior guides. Aspiring junior guides can anticipate the beginning of their training near the end of level 3, as they progress into the upper intermediate stages of development. Actually, we begin our training as subordinate guides long before attaining level 4. In the lower stages of development, we help others in life as friends, and between lives assist our peer group associates with counseling. Junior and senior teaching assignments appear to reflect the will of master guides.
It sounds like an ever-loving nightmare. A nightmare. Ugh. Do you not just imagine how many times we've been through this crap? Ugh. It's horrific. School and masters and rankings and blah, 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 blah. All this crap just to get us back to this place? Really? Feed on that? Or there's probably, I'm convinced that there's these other, Earth-like matrices out there. Probably different in many ways or slightly different ways, who knows. And it's just because you would think that they would have backups going on, different zones where, like, oh, okay, maybe there's too many people kind of catching on over there, so we better send them over there. We'll give them like a new environment, maybe even like a new soul group too. That would be a twist in things too, where you maybe get new connections. Who knows? Just throwing that out there. It's all just theoretical. But anyways, let's go on.
Form a kind of governing body, similar to a trusteeship, over the younger guides of the spirit world. We will see examples of how the process of guide development works in chapters 10 and 11, which cover cases of more advanced souls. Do all guides have the same teaching abilities? And does this affect the size of the group to which we are assigned in the spirit world? The following passage is from the case file of an experienced soul who discussed this question with me. Case 17. Dr. N. I'm curious.
Alright. So, froze up for a minute there. So that's the last one of the day. So we're going to pick up on case 17, which took forever to get to. Excuse me, I did not expect to be here this long, but had some fun, right? Very interesting bunch of insanity. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do in the next video. Probably a couple days or sometime this weekend. Most of them are going to be much shorter than this. Like I said, about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Trying to not to push over 2.5 hours. But you know, we plowed through some of it, and chat was awesome. Sorry I couldn't mix it up as much. I'm just really horrible with multitasking. Again, for anyone new here who hasn't checked out Odyssey, give it a shot. Go check it out. No censorship going on over there from everything I can tell. It seems like a really solid platform, and they do have streaming, and I will be doing exclusive streams over there in the near future. You can check my description tab or about tab, and the referral link. If you use the invite link specifically, you'll get some free library crypto with that, and it also helps promote the channel over on their platform. Doesn't cost anything. And you know, I also have the 2 YouTube backup channels as a precaution. Feel free to sub and bell those. I won't harass you over there unless I end up being forced to go over to those channels. And then I have a Twitter and a YouTube. All the links are in the description. And that's going to wrap things up. So I appreciate everyone sticking around, and I hope this was helpful and further exposing the Matrix Reincarnation Soul trap. Please help do your part by spreading awareness so other people at least hear that this is happening. This probably isn't this set of videos really isn't probably the best examples to start people with. I really think the near-death experience aspect of things is really an area, because there's a lot there that, you know, you can read, watch, listen to those yourself, and I think people are more receptive on that end. Something like this, I didn't really get into this right away. It was the last of all the things related to the trap. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that. So try and spread awareness in some way. If you have a blog, if you have a YouTube channel of your own, if you got a Twitter, Facebook, any of that stuff, you know, just post your thoughts on it. You know, don't be afraid to make a video and put yourself out there. If you don't want to show your face, I understand that too, but just get your voice out there. So in some way, so people are at least hearing a different perspective of the same information, or this not the same information, but the same concept, and have it rooted in sovereignty and liberation, no gurus, all that stuff. And I think that's the most important thing that we can do, really, is just continually help spread awareness. So I encourage you all. Much love, blessings, and I will see you sometime soon. Probably in a couple days. Take care.